Hello and welcome to an unexpected podcast. My name is Tim. With me as always, we have Matt, Rainier, Devin, and Mick. Joining us on this week's episode is Will Champion. How are you doing this week, Will?
I am very good, and thank you for having me. I'm very excited for this podcast.
So how's it kind of been during the COVID era for you?
It's been really interesting. Yeah, I've just been catching up with a couple of your other panel members. It's been an interesting year for sure. I've changed jobs and I'm now working in gaming, which is everyone's dream.
Absolutely.
And I've spent the last couple of months on furlough doing my commission painting. So I've not been able to play many games, but I've certainly been engrossed in toys, which is what we want.
All right. Awesome. So for those who don't know, Will Champion is actually a prominent member of the GBHL. Actually, kind of like there for quite a while. How many years have you been part of the community at this point?
Do you know, it doesn't feel like I've been there long at all. I think that's just what getting old means. But I think I've been playing for about 7 years now, give or take.
All right.
And it really does not feel like that at all.
And do you consider yourself one of the at least higher tier competitive players within the UK, or?
I'd have to back myself there. Yeah, I was lucky enough, I suppose, to win the league in 2019 before COVID. So
is that how you got the name Champion?
Yeah, I actually changed it after I won. I was Smith beforehand.
Well done, sir.
Here in the past, and then came William Champion.
William from third place to William Champion.
Sometimes it's all in the name.
Now, did you kind of get into this during the kind of Hobbit era, or did you play during the Lord of the Rings back in like the early 2000s?
So I, like almost every nerd, got the Battle Games in Middle Earth magazines way back when. Painted the models up with my mum's nail varnish. Probably a little bit young to be picking it up. Just very keen with like the Lord of the Rings world. Got rid of all my models when I went to secondary school, and then sort of when the Hobbit film came out, my girlfriend at the time actually went, "Oh, do you know that there's actually like a tabletop game for this?" And I sort of played it very coy and went, "Oh, is there? Oh, I don't know, I'm not sure." And she said, "Yeah, maybe we should play." And so we got a few models and had a few games, and then she lost interest and I started going to events and spent all our money. So I'd say I'm primarily a Hobbit era player. That was when I sort of started playing properly and actually using the rules.
So are any of the figures that you painted with your mom's nail varnish like still in circulation somewhere? Did you sell them? Did you dump them? What happened to them?
Yeah, I burnt them under darkness. No, I sold it all to a family friend, but he also now plays and he's still got them all. So there are some horrendously painted like Warriors of Gondor in a toy box somewhere. But yeah, they still exist as far as I'm aware.
I have to say, I had a similar thing. I was not with this system, but I did historical miniatures, and this was this would have been decades ago, and I did the same thing where I sold a bunch of them when I went off to college, and then ended up playing, started playing again in college, and then was playing again after college. And when I came back, I got a job. I actually bought back all my figures, so I have all the horrendously painted figures still up in the attic. So I highly recommend that.
Absolutely, yeah, always sell local. And I'd be lying if I said I hadn't gone back through the collection and stole back all the figures of value.
Yeah,
you can keep the nail varnish Warriors of Gondor, but I'll take the 24 metal Citadel Guard. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I guess we'll get into our list review for this week. It is by Thomas Challen. So, Will, if you want to go ahead and go over that for this week.
Awesome. So the first warband is led by Durbers, with leading a cave troll with hammer, a bat swarm, a goblin drum, and 8 goblin warriors. We've then got Groblog, leading 12 warriors, 6 with shield, 6 with spear. We've got a goblin captain with shields, leading 8 goblins, 4 shield, 4 spear. The goblin captain with bow, very, very fancy, leading 12 goblin warriors with bows. Okay. A goblin captain with shield, leading 4 shield, 4 spears. And then a Moira black shield shaman, everybody's favourite, leading 3 shield, 3 spears. So overall, we've got 64 models, 14 bows at 750 points. That is a lot of goblins.
It is a lot of goblins.
There is a lot of bows that only ever hit on 6s when they move.
Yeah, that's. I think we'll be all talking about that one.
On the bright side, blinding light doesn't matter.
That is
I mean,
very true.
You've
there you
given
go.
blinding light to all your opponents.
They're the only archers in the game where you're allowed to move 3 inches and it doesn't make a difference.
All right, so Will, what's your opinion on this? Let's get your thoughts first as the guest here.
So it's definitely right up my street. I tend to play sort of target denial. I don't usually take big heroes and things like that. So something spammy like this is right up my street. The 12 bows can get in the bin. Unfortunately, no matter what way you dress it up, goblin archers are never worth taking. Not even for a lucky 6. It's just not worth it. Durbers and Groblog are both auto includes and really nice. It's just a load of worries, isn't it? A couple of little sort of bookkeeping things I'd want to do would be to put shields on the spearmen, have defense 5 everywhere. It just denies your opponent any decent like soft targets. The Black Shield Shaman's great. I'd maybe try and get another Black Shield Shaman in there because I don't think you need that many Goblin captains. And shattering big heroes, it can just turn a game on its head pretty quickly. And the only other thing I'd really change would be to get a few more Bat Swarms in there as well, because again, in an objective game, I know you've got quite a lot of Might from March there, but Bat Swarms can destroy heroes and they can win your objective games. So I'd probably thin the numbers a little bit and then reinvest those points into upgrading some of the heroes and squeezing some more bats in.
All right, so I agree with the adding another shaman bit. Actually, just counting the warbands, seems he can do that pretty easily if I'm counting it correctly. So he could redistribute that. I find that a lot of times with one shaman, you might get a shatter to go through, but with 2, it's like basically guaranteed. And with this list, you clearly have nothing big other than the cave troll to deal with heroes yourself. So it's great to neutralize them with that and the bat swarms, as you mentioned. I'm curious, you say Groblog is an auto include. I do think he's interesting and good. I guess maybe I don't have enough experience with him to say. Why do you feel he's an auto include?
So the way that Groblog's got strike, I believe, for a start. Correct me if I'm wrong, which is just a useful thing to have. You normally want at least 2 in your list, unless you're running something very specialized that doesn't need
Does have strike.
Excellent. I'm not lying then. It's a good start.
He has the fight 3 strike.
Yes, and he also has the special rule which can bump fight value around him, which I suppose in this list is slightly less valuable. But if you were ever to take things like Prowlers, you can really up their value pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But what it does do is if you come against something grim like Lake Town that might sort of match your numbers pretty well, and you could have a pretty hard slog on your hands, just having a little bit of a bubble that can match their fight value could make a pretty significant difference. Same with things like Hunter Orcs. If the center of your battle line can match their fight value, it's going to slow the tide of them being able to kill you, especially if everything's defense 5 as well.
Or Goblin Town, you'd be actually outfighting Goblin Town.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, Goblin Town's another great example because you've got better defense and you'd have better fight in a bubble. And realistically, with that many models, your battle lines are only going to clash over a certain area. So if you've got a bubble that's got Durbers, Groblog, the Cave Troll, and then a good little group of goblins that are all +1 fight, you can actually do a fair bit of damage.
I like Groblog as well because I think the ability, especially with this kind of list, you don't really have anything to really fight that well against heroes, and him being able to go into hero and heroic defense 3 times as well. If you just want to hold someone in place, I think that's invaluable as well to go along with what Will said. So you have the ability to strike or defense combined with the ability to get +1 fight value, and it's not that much more than a regular captain. Plus the adding the might to it, I like Groblog as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Heroic defense is quite often underused, and it's really good. But I think you've hit the nail on the head there in that because he's only barely worth more than a captain, there's not really a reason not to take him. You could absolutely hate him, but just to get an extra might point is probably worth looking at anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't realized that his special ability affects it's all Moria goblins.
Yeah.
So it actually affects Durbers too.
Exactly.
So you can get Durbers up to fight 5, and then
Yeah.
he can strike on top of that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the best thing is if you take more bat swarms as well, it doesn't really matter that Groblogs only fight 3, maybe up to 4, because if you get the bat swarm into the same combat, you barely have to strike, and if you do, the roof that you're looking for is much lower because you only need to match or beat 5.
So so all right. So a bunch of people have talked about other things to get into this list, and in particular bat swarms, and I think that's probably right. And then the question kind of becomes, well, where do the points come from?
Cave troll. I'd get rid of that personally. I don't think it's
but
adding
then,
anything.
Then he has nothing that can. He has nothing that can really kill stuff.
Well, the bat swarms and heroes combined
Yeah.
together can kill stuff.
But they don't have the punch.
They don't have the hitting power, I suppose you could say. But I mean, like one cave troll's really going to make the difference in a list like this.
Well, I'm going to put the drum on the table as something that.
Wow, but that's a force multiplier across the entire army.
No, it's not across the entire army.
I'd agree with Matt. I'd put the drum on the line too because, like,
These are fighting
cave,
words.
The cave troll. Look at that. Matt and I are gonna stay in our corner. The cave troll is gonna add that big punch and just like bring the uniqueness. But if you drop the drum, then you can also add like more bat swarms, prowlers.
You can add a regular shaman, for example.
Yeah, regular shaman. So you can get. So there's like more diversity, I guess, in the list. Because when I see this, I'm like, that's great. But it's like outside of the heroes and the cave troll, you're just gonna like munch through this army really easily. And I say this as a fight for horde player. Like this just looks like delicious. Like you just munch through it. But like if you bring a prowler or more bat swarms, more maybe potential to talk about like what are those warg rider guys. But yeah, I just would want to add a little more to the army to give it more of a threat overall. Because right now it just looks like a couple big things than just bodies.
Yeah. So if it became a trade-off, let's say we have to pick one to get rid of, the cave troll or the goblin drum. The troll's going every time.
I would get rid of the cave troll.
Yeah,
like every single time I'd get rid of that one. I don't. I mean, I hear what you guys are saying, and I guess I'll just say it from my mind. I mean, like literally the entire army is getting a boost from the drums, whereas the cave troll is a singular location and easily neutered.
But you do get the privilege of your opponent saying they have a cave troll.
Well,
oh, great. It's a competitive podcast. I kind of feel...
You've got to speak there. You've got to speak.
There you guys go. It's final nail in the coffin.
With where the points are going to come from, you could drop the troll, and I don't think it would actually affect the army in any way, because the army is clearly being built around to having more numbers on the table than your opponent. And by putting in one big hitter, you're basically just putting up a target to die. Which doesn't necessarily, might not exactly swing a game for you, but you could quite easily lose 100 points off the goblin captain with bow and the 12 bows, and then 80 from the troll, and you've got 180 points to put back into that list. Is a lot to play with.
So
yeah, like you could have like 2 cave trolls for that.
This seems like something. It seems like something we're going to be divided on.
12 goblin archers.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, Mick. Which way do you go on that, drum or cave troll?
I mean,
smart way.
I generally like to disagree with Matt, so I will go. So cave troll would have to go.
Yeah. So remember, this drum is not army wide. It's not.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
It's an 18-inch. It's an 18-inch range. Because it's not in the legendary legion.
Is basically the
but it can't move in drum, right?
I was gonna say I don't think
it's not a very difficult problem to solve.
It is. Sure. If the drum's at the back of the board, it has to either advance. It means it has to advance with the troops.
You could be playing on
vulnerable.
You could be playing on a 6 foot by 4 foot board, and if at least half your army isn't in drum range, you have really done something wrong.
Yeah. I mean, the other problem this list has, by the way, is it has no answer to terror other than the +1 that you get from the drum.
Yeah, that's where the regular shaman.
And that's not enough.
So I'll give that. The shaman is not a bad shout.
Yeah,
you need. If I was ever to run Moria, I'd probably have 2 Black Shield shamans and 1 normal shaman as a default. You need to have some fury in there, even if you're not looking to get that fury bubble up, but just to make sure your heroes don't run away when the time comes. I think you're a little bit crazy to take Moria without a shaman.
Yep.
I think we could probably all agree on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's enough slots there that you could turn that Moira Goblin Captain with bow into a shaman and then just redistribute the Goblin Warriors to fill in.
And I think that's another reason to take Groblog at that point, because if you're using 2 black shields and then let's say regular shaman, you don't have a ton of might at that point. So then adding that 3rd point of might is another reason to have him in there.
Yeah, and you still have 2, even if you get rid of 1 captain, you still have 2 captains for March, which I think is enough.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
I think if you can only fit 1 more shaman, like the person making this list of, like, let's say if he wants the captains for numbers or whatnot and he can't make it work, I would say 1 and 1 at least, like a black shield, and then because you really do want the fury in the list.
But I'd have to agree with Will on one of the points that I think is like one of the most like important points is shield up all your models. Yeah. Because D4 they're gonna drop really fast in combat and in shooting.
Get rid of all your bows.
Well, I mean, I've tried to make bows work, and I could never make bows work with these guys either. I'm on the fence as to shielding up all your guys, because I tend to find that unless you're fighting, unless you're dealing with strength 2 bows, the guys with the shields drop just as fast as the guys with the spears.
Well, whenever you're fighting against any sort of heroes, they will generally try to pick out the guys without shields, because
but they're gonna kill the guys with the shields anyway.
Well, I mean, a base strength 4 actually,
like
it's pretty arguable.
Strength 4 with, let's say, 2 strikes against defense 5. It's like a 50-50, but against defense 4, it's like 3/4.
Yeah, but you're charging on a horse, so you're going to knock him down.
I think
what you're really getting is 4 strikes.
More than that too, like the ability where you can throw 2 goblins in and shield.
Yeah, and
throw
that's
4 dice,
huge.
and then you like throw them against a hero, and you roll 4 dice. You roll a 6, and they roll like a 4 or 5. Like that's where the shield is too. Like the whole 64 model, or like after you do the tweaks, like your whole army is going to have that ability, which is a really good way. Usually evil, you could shoot into combat to delay heroes, but I think the shielding would help a lot.
But I mean, it's not that you don't take anybody with shields, but considering they're only 5, they're what, base 4-point models, and then 5 if you get the shield on them, or is it 5 and then 6?
I think they're 4 to 5, I believe.
Plus spear for 5.
Yeah. So at that point combination, the exchange rate of shields for figures racks up really quickly, and you can actually get a significant, if you just eschew the shields, you can get on some of them, like the spear guys, you can get a lot more models. You
could probably get anywhere from 4 to 6 models if you probably didn't take the shields at the back based on the numbers we're looking at here. Maybe a little bit more actually.
Yeah,
maybe a front rank, back rank.
I'd still say shields though. Like this is where I'm gonna break with you, Matt. Like
well, that's the question: is how much is too much?
I'll stand on my hill all alone.
I'm not opposed to it, man. I really am not. But I would say in a list like this, when you've already got 64 models, if you go down to 60, maybe. Is it that big of a deal?
But we're going to lose 7 of those models because we're putting in another bat swarm.
Because
no, you're taking the troll out or drum if you fall or the drum.
I would laugh at this list without a troll. The troll is the only thing in this list that makes this scary.
I got an idea too. What are your guys' thoughts on dropping the shield on the captains? That gives you.
Oh yeah,
if you keep 2, that's 10 points right there. Boom, 10 upgraded shields right there.
Shields as well.
Yeah,
because all the captains are going to do is stand behind the lines and call heroic moves and heroic marches.
Anyone watching this on YouTube, like, comment below if you're on team remove the troll or remove the drum. We'll have a.
I'm just going to go with Matt just so it's 3v3.
There you go.
I think you guys make significant points and stuff, but you know what? I'm going to die on the hill with Matt.
I'm just going to make it 3v3 so it makes it interesting.
Well, I was going to say, maybe if you're on the side of removing the troll, give us a like. If you're on the side of removing a drum, give us a dislike.
Oh gosh!
You're just gonna bury the YouTube video.
Don't.
YouTube be like, everyone hates this video.
I mean, I will say, in my humble opinion, the goblin or the cave troll from the Moria list, or the Angmar list, I guess, is the only non-hero monster that I think is really worth taking, and that's because he's on the 40 mil base, and he is a much scarier monster to me than say the Mordor trolls, because the most you can ever get, if he's played correctly and is kind of sandwiched between a bunch of goblins, the most you're really ever going to get on him is like one hero in a one-on-one, and that's a real scary thought process to go through, because there's always the possibility that even if you go in and you call your strike, you could flub the die roll loose to that cave troll, and then you get hurled off your horse, and you've kind of lost an effective hero.
And I don't think anyone's saying the cave troll's bad.
No, the cave troll's very good.
Yeah, we all like it.
Yeah, I'd argue that the Gundabad Ogre should probably be vying for the top spot as well, because for 60 points, he's just jokes.
Yeah, I'll put him as a second. I also take on Gundabad Ogres. I hadn't really thought about him, but I mean, I prefer the cave troll to the ogre. Although, yeah, the ogre's cheaper. So, but yeah, the fight 5 on the Gundabad Ogre, I think, is what holds it back for me, because you can send a fight 6 hero into him, and you don't need to strike to kill him.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting, though, between the cave troll and the drum, when you think about it like this, right? So if you keep the cave troll and get rid of the drum, you have kind of like a balance where you have things to shut down other heroes, but then you also have something that can do a little bit more hitting. So it's a little bit more balanced in that regard. If you get rid of the cave troll to add the bat swarms, you're essentially playing not necessarily a defensive game, but you're playing more of like, I'm just going to try to shut down your heroes and let my troops try to do the talking, kind of a thing. So it's more like, do you want to be more of a balance, or do you want to be more of like, I'm going to play more of a shutdown list?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing, because it's like the cave troll is like, oh, there's an obvious target, but without the cave troll, the whole army is just meh in combat. You know what I mean? Like there's no threat that could actually destroy a battle line with a hurl. There's no threat that can burst through a battle line. There's no threat that could kill a hero in one turn. So like in my opinion, that's why I go for the cave troll, because it gives it, even if he is a target, like it gives that punch. You know, well,
I mean that is why he's the obvious target, right? I mean, he's the obvious target in the list because he's the only threat in the list.
Mm-hmm.
I think
look at us, Matt.
Met is fine.
Stick to it, brother.
I think having Met is fine, because the more your army bonus is backstabbers, right? If they're trapped, is that what that is?
No. Is it back? Is it backstab?
No, they get a plus one fight value.
Plus one fight.
Plus one
which
fight.
Almost never,
prowlers.
Which almost
that's
never
where they
matters.
should add prowlers.
Yeah, that's right. The army bonus is irrelevant.
The army's bonus, really. I conveniently ally this army all the time. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
But some would disagree with me. Actually, I know there is one player. What is Barney? Doesn't he play this army?
Yeah, but then he plays prowlers, which once you have backstabbers and you're able to put bats on the back of your opponent, then
it makes a difference.
You get Groblog and
they go up to fight 5.
You get like fight 5 with 2-handed weapons.
Sure, so it's a different army at that point.
Yeah,
so they still lose the fight because they got 2-handed weapons. But you made it scary while you lost.
You'd be comparing essentially a completely different list, because the way Barney plays it is probably only just over like your average model count, but it's got all the shenanigans. So he takes Druzag the Beast Caller and spiders and stuff, and he really goes for the Swiss Army knife. Whereas
it's totally different.
Cave Troll or Goblin Drum. This is a very generalist list. And I think that's why it's better off without the troll and taking more goblins, just pushing that break limit up and just relying on shielding until you can trap people and then just letting the dice do the work. I think that's why there's another good reason to put the shield on everybody, because you shield where it's evens, and then you use the heroic moves and whoever gets priority to then wrap around. And at the point where you've got your 60 to 70 goblins around their army, that's when you start fighting with everyone.
I still think the best shield for a goblin is another goblin.
So if we did the thing where we took 2 black shields and a shaman, we're only allowed 18 troops in those 3 war bands. So are we concerned at all about the fact that the numbers get too low based on that kind of sequence?
He has 2 captains with only 8 models in it. So,
yeah, so that would give
I'd
8.
have to add. Yeah,
So
because
you'd be at like a 10 model deficit if you accounted for that.
Yeah. And
okay, so you
Durbers,
guys would be happy to go at 750 to go down to like 54, 50.
I think you go higher because
I don't know that he would. Because
well,
Durbers
so
has
15.
8,
What is
10,
Durbers?
11.
What is
Durbert's is not even
Valor?
full.
You could add
Yeah.
4 more to Durbert's and then 8 more to the 2 captains. So
no, the
that's
drum
8,
counts
12.
as 2. So 10, 11, 12. So he's got
Still
3 more in
10.
Durbert's. And also, when you drop the captain, you're only dropping by 6, and you have another captain who has still 4 open slots.
Yeah.
So you
It
actually
probably
only lose
doesn't change
2.
that much.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
lose like 2 models. You're not losing a lot.
Okay, so fair enough then. All right. So I think the general consensus is to go with the two black shield shamans, the regular shaman, keep Groblog and Durbers for the might as well as the ability to do their little special abilities. And then you guys let us know in the comment section if you're Team Cave Troll or Team Drum. Let us know how you would go in that situation. But Thomas, that's genuinely what we're thinking for this list to make it better. And then use those points towards adding 2 more bat swarms to make it more, make it able to shut down more heroes, get behind lines, that kind of thing. We'll move on to the main topic for today, which is the same as kind of what we did in a previous episode where we asked, what's it like in your area. So, Will, what area of England are you from?
We're talking about meta for anyone listening here. We're not just talking about the location. We're talking
it's really sunny.
Should I vacation there? Should I vacation there?
Yeah. Nearby.
And I'm looking for a place to go after COVID. I just,
Yeah, lots of nice pubs, Warhammer Worlds nearby.
Get a good game of darts in.
Yeah, exactly. What is it like in my area? So my area is Nottingham. It's pretty much in the centre of England. And I'd argue that it's the heart of the SBG competitive scene. I think mainly through happenstance that a lot of the competitive players work for Games Workshop and therefore live in Nottingham. And it's kind of, new players come to play. They play against players that play all the time and are naturally very good. And so the skill pool of this area has just increased over time. I've just happened to move here and wasn't terrible anyway. But the sort of competitive scene is pretty hot in this area.
Okay. So it must be kind of, and I know there's a lot of different groups in England that all kind of meet together. What would you say if you were to specifically kind of go to, let me ask you this first, actually. Do you guys meet up often, like obviously before COVID or probably after COVID? How often were you guys meeting up, would you say, as an area?
It's kind of swings and roundabouts because the competitive players in this area have also got, quite a bit older and sort of coming of age. Everyone's got houses and girlfriends and wives and all of that. And so the sort of play time has probably diminished, but I think the conversations and the not necessarily list planning, but sort of discussions on what cool new stuff is available and what combinations has remained at a constant.
Okay, so
I remember one of the things I noted about the UK scene before America actually eventually got caught up is that you guys have like 20 tournaments a year. It's like 2 every weekend or something. It's like 24.
Yeah, you guys have large tournaments too. Can you tell us about the size of y'all's tournaments?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been very lucky in that the community has just kept on growing from the old GBHL days. We've had all sorts of new tournaments, new people wanting to get involved, and just increase across the board. We're also lucky to have tournaments that were originally would be lucky to get 24 players, and that was like the best thing ever. So now England's host to Ardacon, which has upwards of 200 people. But generally speaking, I think the tournament average probably sits around the 40-50 mark. One thing I can say, because it's directly affected me, I used to run an event in Ripon, and that was capped at 24 people purely because the pub was that big. And as a league, we've now ruled that if you want to run a 100-point event, which is our competitive ones, you have to be able to have a capacity of at least 32 people. So that should be a bit of an indication of the positive steps that the league's taking. You're like, if you can't fit 32 people, you can't run a 100-point event anymore.
Yeah,
which is
like when we
but awesome.
Started the league.
Yeah.
It was like I think 16 was the minimum for a fully competitive 100-point event, and then it just grown over the last 6 years.
Well, that's
can you guys explain 100 points because like us American players, we don't have a league.
Yeah,
and like when some of us hear 100 points, I know we'll think 100 points like that's a low tournament for like gaming, but like you guys mean tournament points. Do you mind elaborating on that?
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. So long before I started, the league was split into 100-point events and 80-point events, which is obviously what we refer to. So an 80-point event is considered to be like a sort of casual or fun event. That's generally where the more harebrained rules packs come out and random scenarios and list restrictions. And it's normally for the banter. That's also like doubles tournaments and things like that. And if you were to win that, you'd get 80 league points. A competitive event is considered to be 100 points. And that will be restricted in ways of points value or the way it can be scored, and the rules packs are sort of checked a little bit more firmly just to make sure that they are sort of not standardized, because we like everyone to have their own spin on things, but it's set in a way that is a way that sort of everyone knows roughly what they're going to be doing. And so if you win a 100-point event, you get 100 points. If you come second, you get 95. And if you come third, you get 90. And then there's some weird math thing that I don't understand that calculates your points. But
he doesn't need to know the math below third place. He's like, I don't even know.
But then ultimately your league position is decided on your 4 best scores. And obviously you would cap out in theory at 400 points if you won 4 events. And then you get to 5th tiebreaker, 6th tiebreaker. But basically the short version is 100-point events are the competitive ones, 80-point are the fun ones.
All right. Yeah. No, in America, we just have like we call it just an alliance, and we don't build up toward anything. So most of the time when you're attending a tournament, it's really just to practice or meet the community and
just
it's kind of
yeah.
Everything kind of emerges towards Nova. So like you have like your fun events, and then as Nova's coming, you go into the spring and summer. They all start getting to the same points as Nova as people prepare. But also like each state I feel has their like big two-day event that's like modeled off Nova, but it's nothing. Yeah, we're like, you said it perfectly, Devin. We're like an alliance. So like when I hear y'all's like organization, I'm like, ooh, like would that work here or in America? We've toyed with the idea, but then it's like, I mean, y'all see America.
England is the size of Florida.
I think league sounds a lot fancier than it actually is. I'm on the committee, so I can say with confidence that we're a bunch of idiots just trying to make it work well. But yeah, we're incredibly.
That seems like the textbook definition of a committee.
Maybe we're exactly what we need to be. But fundamentally, it's going to be a lot easier for us because we have a lot of people that are keen to play events. We have a lot of people that are keen to run events. And realistically, if you lived in the top of Scotland and you wanted to go to an event at the bottom of England, it would take you like 10, 12 hours. Like that would be the worst you would have to do. But typically, you'd never have to go more than 2 hours to get to an event, give or take. Which
I've flown to an event.
It's not possible, is it?
There's a monetary.
We have on the East Coast like Philly, DC, Maryland and stuff like that's like I guess we all see each other all the time. New Jersey probably, but then you're right. Like say if someone from Pennsylvania drives down to one in North Carolina, that's like 9 hours.
Yeah, it's crazy.
At the least, it's insane.
And that's not even considered a far distance here in America.
No, that's a short distance.
I'd say the average distance is probably 4 to 5 hours minimum.
I have actively rejected the idea of making any sort of league for that reason. Like, honestly, at that point, it becomes a monetary thing. Who can fly the most? Exactly. And, so essentially the top players can be the ones who can afford to be a top player. It's just...
There is an element of that, And I think that's one of the reasons that our league has got like a capped scoring. So it's your best 4 scores, because that means people that would struggle to travel, they get less bites of the cherry, but, 4 events is all you'd need to do to try and win the league.
Sure. And I guess you run into these weird situations where, like, so though in America, and Rainier probably may correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I generally regard most of the most competitive players to be all on the East Coast. That, like, in America, that and it makes sense because we can drive to each other very quickly, very easily.
There's bigger communities too. Like
oh wow,
yeah.
I can see our West Coast listener numbers dropping.
Yeah, I know.
Right now. Oh, there they go.
If I had to
yeah,
say,
someone in
who's
Seattle
going to
is
get
like,
more
screw
player
this.
time?
Like,
there's not only more players in the East Coast, but we get more play time. I mean, honestly, like, yes,
no, but
it's
true because
there,
like
sure.
because like we can have like four or five in New Jersey a year, 2-3 in New York a year, five in Pennsylvania, like all these different places is like boom, 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 boom.
And then we forget
you get
Canada
more
as well.
Whereas out in Cali, I mean, you know, what do they got, like,
but
10 guys
exposure to like other competitive players too. I think that's what makes. I mean, in America, most of our like prime players come from the East Coast, but it's because we're playing each other. Like I always play Matt and Devin and Tim and stuff. We just play each other, so we get better.
And that's the same in Nottingham, and that's, you know, historically when I came onto the scene and you know, barely knew how to play the game, most of the best players lived in and around Nottingham, and they all played together. So even if they, you know, play a casual game every Thursday, if you're playing with the best people once a week, you're naturally going to sort of rise above the average player from somewhere else that plays with his cousin, because, you know, they're the only people near each other. It's just bound to happen.
Okay. We'll move on to kind of the next. So when you're, and I know you mentioned you more talk rather than play nowadays because, you know, people have things to do. If you guys do play a game, what armies do you guys tend to struggle to go against nowadays?
It's, oh god, that is the $1 million question, isn't it? As a group, it's quite polarizing, and I've got to sort of be careful what I say, because obviously I moved here during COVID, so I'm kind of speaking for very close friends of mine, but I'm also haven't necessarily been here since the start. But, you know, to answer as best I can, as a group of players, we have a very diverse way of playing. Some of us are known for taking one specific thing and doing very well with it. So like Ed Ball will take his Fell Beasts, I mean, not anymore because they've been nerfed into the ground, but he'll now take his Rivendell Knights. You kind of have an idea what he'll take. Jay Clare can take a variety of things, but he will generally take his Lake Town if he needs to do well at an event. And so you've got a number of our players in the field that you kind of know what they're going to take, and they'll take a very specific thing that they are absolutely excellent at. And then there's players like myself that sort of like to throw random things together, find chinks in the armor, and take sort of lots of different things. So one thing that's been beneficial for me is I've got a roommate, Ryan Hinch, very good friend of mine, and he's another competitive player, and he kind of subscribes into taking the batshit stuff. And so we'll constantly bounce ideas off each other of, you know, what's this combination with this, and the same with Matt Light. Ryan and Matt were pioneers in 2019 of taking the Red Alliance and sort of using the technical restrictions of the sort of heroics and standfasts and what have you, and using it to your advantage. So I'm sure we'll talk about sort of specific metas in a bit, but in our local area, you've kind of got half the people that like what they know and know what they like, and the other half, you never know what they're going to bring to the table because it will just be random nonsense.
Okay.
Yep. Which is the difference between Rainier and I think.
Rainier tends to stay kind of in one lane with the evil men that he loves.
He likes
so
his evil
much.
men.
He loves his
evil men. I got my theme. Like I got a place. I've placed with like the majority of them, but I still need to place with a couple more. And then after that, it's into the West I go. Like boom, like I'm gonna sail away. Retirement. Yeah, Matt, like you're like, Matt's coming to the tournament. He'll either bring a Lake Town spam or Tom Bumbabill and Fangorn.
Yeah. And that's, I think that's been one of the keys to my success, in that because I've been able to predict what a lot of the best players are going to take, it's almost like an extra criteria of what to take in my list. You know, I need to have this much might, I need to have this many models, and I also need to be able to beat this, and this. And it's kind of helped me sculpt the way I play. And I think it's helped me be quite a flexible player. I mean, the GBHL final in 2019, I needed to come second or first for me to win the league. I think I beat Jay Clare in the league by 0.75 points or something. It was that close in the end. And I took the Defenders of Helm's Deep Legendary Legion on the day that it was released. So I'd never played a game with it, but nor had anybody else. And I saw the synergies that I liked, and I took lots of Royal Guard because of their bonuses, and just built it in a very specific way. And it certainly helped that most people hadn't even considered that they'd have to play against this. And that's kind of the way I like to do things. I like to sort of take different things and find things that people aren't expecting and sort of catch them off guard.
Yeah, that's my way of playing too. I always just try to bring whatever random crap I can come up with, whether it's gonna perform well or not, because then it's almost like there is an innate advantage that you have if your opponents don't know how your army plays, and let's say you've played it once or twice, or you have, or at least you've thought about it, and they've never thought about it. It's like, oh, neither of us really knows what they're doing, but I know a bit better than you do. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
It's always a warm, fuzzy feeling when you walk up to the table, tell the other guy what's in your army, and he goes, what rules does that have?
Oh, that's always a great feeling. Perfect.
Or it's better when you tell him what your army does and they kind of snort and laugh and go, all right, yeah, sure. And they've not really seen the bigger picture of what your army can actually do yet. And then at the end of the game, they're like, oh, I get it now. Yeah, I understand.
So, Will, I want to ask you, the year that you won it, and I know that there might be perhaps bigger leagues around the world than the GBHL, but I think most people would probably agree you guys are the most commercialized kind of, league in the world where like everybody knows about you kind of a thing. Is it kind of, when you went into that season, where you're like, I'm going to try to win it this season, or was it more like you just go to each tournament and see what happens? Like, do you have a plan to kind of win it, or is it just kind of like, I'm going to play each tournament and see how I do kind of a thing?
No, absolutely not. I'm a bumbling idiot that's not bad at SBG. So I came third in the league the year before, and for me that was great success. Ed and Jay came first and second. I can't remember what order, and those guys are, they're not gods. They do bleed, but generally speaking, it's a dead cert that they're going to be first and second in one order. So for me, getting third place in 2018 was like winning the league for us sort of regular guys.
You took the only other eligible spot.
Yeah, it sounds ridiculous, but it was actually like that. I'm the third person ever to win the league because those two normally always win it and always have. And so coming into, I'm going to call it last year because COVID's just ruined everything. But last year, 2019. I was really happy that I came third and did my usual thing of taking the piss for the first few events and taking fun stuff and trying to relax. Then realised that I absolutely despise losing, so I can't take like things for fun anymore. I'm not a sore loser, but if I take a silly army that's not going to do very well, I don't find it very satisfying. So I took the Balrog, a Bat Swarm, and a Gundabad Shaman to a 450 point event and got absolutely bodied and went, yeah, do you know what? This is silly. And then I got a first place at an event, and then I won the next event. I think it was 2 weeks later, so I won two back to back, and already had a second place. And so suddenly I was right up in the leaderboard, and I was like, oh, hold on, we might be onto something here. And so at that point, sort of halfway through the season, I was like, no, I've got a real chance here. And so sort of stepped up my competitive game and then managed to sort of squeak it right at the finish line. But it wasn't my intention at the start to finish how I did.
Makes sense. What I want to ask you for the next question is and I know we're kind of generalizing like the Nottingham area, but I guess we can kind of go with, anywhere that you'll play that's relatively close. What are the common points values you tend to go against in that area?
It's normally dealer's choice, but you could, I think that the range in the GBHL is huge, unfortunately, because I hate it. You can play as low as 450, generally as high as 1,000, but they're quite rare. But if you just rocked up to a games club on SBG night and you had an army somewhere between 600 and 800 points, you'd be fine. That you'd be on the money. It's interesting that the GVHL seems to ebb and flow in which way it leans. And one year you might have barely any large tournaments and quite a lot of little tournaments, and then the year after it'll go the other way and there'll be barely any little tournaments and lots of quite large ones. It really is quite sort of sporadic, but generally speaking, like 600, 650, 700 is probably the most common.
Okay.
So actually, to just follow up on that, when we first started the league, it was we had this idea to do early tournaments of the year would be lower points, and then as the year progressed, you'd be playing higher points.
I kind of like that actually,
So
where you kind of build up to it.
Yeah. So like because at the time there weren't as many people playing, so we were like, okay, well, for anyone joining, if they are starting the season at the beginning of the season and actually want to get serious about this, then let's say there was like a London tournament in March, which was like 300 points, and that went on for like 4 years in a row.
That was years ago, I imagine. At 300 points,
Yeah,
you're talking about like
it was like 2013, 14, 15, 16.
Yes,
I think.
because Shadow and Sorcery, wasn't it, in London? And it was 350 points in the year that I started. So I went to the event after that.
I believe it started at 300.
Yeah.
And it just went 300 every year. Then went up. Then eventually they canceled it. But it was like those guys had like one tournament which was 300, and then another one which was I think 600 or 700 later in the year. But it was just like progressing. So then Throne of Skulls at the end of the year would usually be 1,000. So you were able to just build up to it.
1,000 points in 2013.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that game take forever? Like, I can't, because I remember back in the day, the game took forever because nothing killed each other very easily.
Yeah.
So, generally a big game was like 700 points. That's when you're like, man, I'm bringing all the biggest toys. 1,000 points, that's like a 3-4 hour game at that time.
I suppose sort of 2012 onwards, though. 2012 onwards is SBG as we know it now, I suppose, and that. It was probably quicker than it is now, because that was when monsters could hurl backwards and also, Piercing Strike.
If you're talking about the Hobbit, yeah, you're right. Yeah, the monsters could destroy stuff faster. You're right.
Yeah, I miss those days.
I'm thinking like pre-Hobbit, like the.
No. So then
I can only imagine.
Pre-Hobbit, the largest tournaments we've ever had were like 700.
Yeah. Okay. Then we're on the same page then, because I was just I had my wrong rules edition.
But then it was a 700 points with like Legolas and 70 Wood Elves. So
yeah, it was different.
So
that was really fun back then.
Will, do you have a favorite points value then to play in general, or do you not really care that much?
I can play at any points level and have lists that I'm happy with, but it really is the bigger the better for me. And I've debated this with people quite a lot, and some people would argue that the lower the points, the higher the skill for the player, because you're very restricted.
That's what I was going to ask next, actually.
I disagree.
Yeah, I am totally the other way, and this is my hill to die on. Because I think if you take a points value where nobody has an excuse to say that they couldn't afford to take this and that, and everybody should have their list in the best way it can be, then the best player will win. So for me, maybe 1,250 is a little bit overboard, because that did get pretty wild. But like 800 to 1,000, I think that's when real player skill comes through.
Okay,
so that would be my choice. If I could play every event at 1,000 points, I would be a very happy man.
So it's interesting, because I know that people make the point that you just made, which is, the lower the points, well, you can only take certain things. It requires you to be able to be, better. But you're going from the opposite direction and saying, I actually think the more, when you have the ability to take everything, you don't have an excuse, which means your writing of lists has to be better, which it's an interest. I've never heard it from that perspective before, which is always good to, hear different things.
I think it also reduces the likelihood of you getting punked, though, because if you go to a 500-point event and let's say you've got no shooting or no shooting protection, and someone takes the Rangers of Ithilien, you can have your punks pulled down. But in the same way, if you're playing low points and someone brings a mummock and you end up on an empty table, there's nothing you can do. There's no mitigation there. The min-maxing is too strong at low points. That means if you just get a matchup that you have no dog in the fight, it's over. Whereas at 1,000 points, you should be able to mitigate or build a generally good army. You're not just going to get ruffled by some random matchup.
Yeah,
But
I agree with you too, because like I see so many of our complaints on this show and other people is certain armies like spam, Rangers, Goblin Town, other things are just auto wins, but they're only auto wins at the lower points.
Exactly.
Where like you come to the 800 1,000, like exactly what you said, you have the tools to actually stop that. Then somebody that brings just a spam list that's going to just win the game based off the list, they don't have the opportunity.
Yeah, I think within reason, I'd love to debate with somebody. Show me an army that is overpowered at 1,000 points, because I don't think there is one.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, I guess to play the devil's advocate here, the argument from the others, or an argument from the other side that has nothing to do with, kind of army design or anything like that, is that 1,000 point events can kind of be a barrier for entry, because
yes,
to compete in a 1,000 point event, you need to paint 1,000 points of figures, and that's a big hurdle for somebody who's like, well, this game seems interesting, maybe I'll try it out.
I think he was talking only specifically from a competitive standpoint. Like,
yeah, no, I get that. I'm just making the case for having smaller tournaments.
Yeah, it's a very valid point. It is definitely a barrier for entry for new players. Not only the having to paint and build and buy that amount of things, but also spinning that many plates during a game. Actually, being cognizant of what's on the table and working out what you need to do is going to be way harder at 1,000 points than it is at 500. But that also kind of leans into my feelings of the higher the points, the higher the skill level.
Well, exactly, because like if you only have to look after, let's say, 5 or 6 models at a smaller points level, versus you have to look at your entire board, your opponent's entire board, the scenario, everything else at a higher level.
It's a lot more things taken into account.
A lot more for you to go wrong. Like, essentially, in a lot of highly competitive games, it's not really about you making the correct plays as much as about your opponent making the mistakes.
Exactly.
And the more mistakes they can make, the more likely you are to win.
Yeah.
It's the old saw about the winner in chess being the one who makes the second to last mistake.
Yeah.
So well, since we have you here, I'd like to get you to weigh in on kind of a related debate that we've had on a couple of weeks in the past, and that's on the complexity of the rules, and whether the trajectory of the rules should be toward increasing complexity, which seems to be the direction that they're going. Or
FAQ plays into that, doesn't it, too, Matt?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, this is FAQ, and this is in rules in general. I mean, the classic example of this is kind of the multiplication of heroic actions that we had in the last rule thing, or whether the trajectory should be towards simplification. Because I think a number of us, I mean, not to kind of bully you into a position, but a number of us on the podcast have advanced the position that the trajectory of the rules should reverse from increasing complexity to increasing simplicity. And one of the arguments that's been made in favor of that is the barrier to entry problem.
And remember, this is UK versus US meta, so you speak for all of England when you answer this question.
Because somebody has to, and it's you.
You alone represent England. Don't get this right.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, the position that a couple of us have advanced, including myself, is that the trajectory should be toward increasing simplicity, because it's the more players, the better, and it's easier to get more players in, particularly players who have not had some sort of miniature gaming background, if the rules are simpler and more elegant. So, with that said, what do you think?
What does England think? Okay,
yes.
It is a phenomenal question, and There's definitely arguments to both sides. I don't think it's an easy one, which is why it's an excellent question to debate. I think that it's undeniable that the game has got more complex over its life. More things have been brought in, like brutal power attacks, special strikes, heroics have diversified massively. But I think in a backwards way, it's kind of got more complex to make it more streamlined. Because in the Lord of the Rings days, the game was simpler but took way longer to play. And that probably is also a barrier to entry for sort of new people with maybe a lesser attention span for miniature games. And while there might be more rules now, I think the game flows a lot better and is probably a lot quicker. So it's kind of a slightly more difficult to pick up with the payoff that it becomes more fluid when you do know. I think it's quite hard to talk about the complexity when you've played as much as I think we all have. We all know the game inside out, so it's quite an interesting one. I don't think it should become too much more complex, but I think that if you were to try and make it simpler, it actually becomes a barrier to creativity on the writer's side. Because let's say we wanted the game to be simpler from this point onwards, that means you'd struggle to get new characters out. You'd struggle to make them be interesting or unique. You'd just have sort of rinse and repeats of things that already exist. And so there's a delicate balance in keeping the game fresh and new without making a million new rules and making it more complex. But on the flip side, I wouldn't like to see the game go sort of towards 40k or Age of Sigmar as a good example, which is an incredibly simple game to play, but I don't find it as tactically enjoyable. So I think if we stay on the course that we're on, tentatively going forward, I think we'd be fine. For my own personal bias, if you said, Will, vote yes or no, I would vote for it to be more complex, but that's because I would enjoy it more because there's more tactical avenues. But as I don't really want to sit on the fence, so I'm going to have to stick with my own opinion of more complex is better than simple, but I fully understand that makes it harder for new players.
So I guess what we could say, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, you're kind of feeling you want certain things to be more advanced, but it would be great if certain things got cleaned up, I guess, is kind of when you said you didn't want to sit on the fence, where you want more things to be creative and be more, this person does this, and this, which adds a new element to the game, but maybe certain things could be cleaned up a little bit. Is that kind of, Jen?
Yeah, potentially. I see the game as quite clean. There's not a huge amount of the game that I disagree with or don't like. There's probably a fair bit of redundancy that could just not be there. I think that you could slimline special strikes. I think you could slimline a lot of magical powers and who can use them. I think you could definitely get rid of the to hit and to wound chart or modify that in a way that's just much easier to interpret. I think anyone can understand the frustration of having to check a table to see if you've wounded something or not 9 times out of 10, assuming that we don't all know the table, which I know we do because we play all the time. So that there are elements that can be cleaned up and simplified, absolutely. But I would not like to see the game made simpler if it took away from the tactical options available, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to see the game become push models around and roll these dice. I love the way that almost every character can work in a different way. Almost every army can work in a different way, and I'd hate to lose that.
Yeah, it actually sounds like you're not kind of far off the position that we were discussing, because I don't think anyone was saying, we want to turn this into a beer and pretzels game.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I guess my feeling about it is there's lots of things that have kind of evolved in the rules, and some of them have evolved lately, and some of them have kind of evolved over time as things kind of got tweaked, that have ended up being kind of inelegant. Special strikes is like the classic example of you've got this layered thing that in many ways is almost like a memory and math test that gets layered on top of of SBG, of like, all right, I have to work the numbers I have to remember which weapon this guy has. I have to remember under what circumstances it is in my benefit to use this special strike. I have to remember to call it. And then I have to remember, how it works.
Well, before we go too far down this rabbit hole, because this is, we've spent a couple of episodes talking about, different ideas and some of our Q&As. This will detract from the subject quite a bit if we keep going down this, just talking about
the fun rabbit holes.
They are the fun rabbit holes, and and obviously we'll have them in future episodes, but I don't want to put Will in a position where.
But I do.
Having to.
but I see what you're talking about. I see what you're talking about, because
this is more likely to. You're going to have me talking here for 5 hours. I'm certainly not shy of this subject.
Of course, yeah.
But to put my position simply, I'm in two minds. As someone that works in a gaming store and is a huge advocate of getting new people into the game, yeah, the game could absolutely be simpler. And if there was like an SBG easy mode that you could teach people with, and then they can sort of develop into, proper play, I'd love it. From a competitive player, make it as complex as you can, because that's what I enjoy, and I love all the different synergies. So I'm definitely on the fence, unfortunately. I'd love to see both.
All right, fair enough.
Okay, so we'll move on to the final question, and it's kind of like I guess you can kind of count it as 2 questions, but based on what you've said in earlier, I'll make it 1. Why do new people tend to get into the game in your area? And would you say that the people in your area are more competitive or themey, or they're kind of in the middle, would you say?
Awesome. I'll answer this question based on where I was before COVID, because that's the best answer I can give. The reason people got into the game in my area is because of me and the people in my area. We bullied all of our friends into buying stuff and playing games, whether they liked it or not. It's a huge part of our social life. We managed to get a good group of sort of 10 to 15 lads that would meet regularly and play. SBG has a really unique selling point in that it's Lord of the Rings, and most people like Lord of the Rings, and that's a really good way of dragging people in, kicking and screaming into playing games with you. So I'd say that the social aspect and the sort of aesthetics of the game was the way of getting people in our area to play. That being said, we also play quite well and quite competitive. A lot of the people that played in my area are also sporty, so that the competitive edge of wanting to win games and stuff, it feeds their soul. And so while everyone loves the theme side of it and having cool stuff, it didn't take too long for them to start leaning over, oh, maybe if I just took this hero instead of that hero, it had become slightly better. And then suddenly you're all Frankenstein's monsters taking red alliances. So it's kind of a slippery slope. But I'd say that generally speaking, they were, the group are more on the themey Green Alliance side of life.
Okay.
Can I ask
any other
a question?
questions?
Yeah, I was going to say, can I ask a couple more maybe argument-inducing questions? So I'm going to ask you I want to ask a couple of, while we have time, some specific meta questions.
Go for it.
Guys, Matt's a lawyer, by the way, and this is where his lawyer.
For anyone who didn't know,
here it goes. He's cross-examining.
So I'm going to ask a couple specific meta questions, and I'm kind of curious to get your answers to what your perspective in the UK as the voice of the entire United Kingdom.
Can we green screen a British flag behind me for these questions?
Yeah, we should actually do that. Yeah. Because as we all know, Mick has nothing to do with the UK.
I have nothing to do with it.
So
I am a citizen.
What do you think about the British trends in army size? Big armies, small armies, medium-sized armies. What's the trend? What are the cool kids doing?
It depends who you ask as to who the cool kids are.
Yes, but we're asking you.
Okay, I will tell you. I think army size has seen a slight downward trend. If we say that Middle-earth SBG is year 0, so like fresh start from there, because I think that's the only relevant information. Army size is smaller than how it used to be. And that's because big heroes have got better and don't get their ass kicked by magic immediately. So having someone like Aragorn or Dane or Thorin or Thranduil is a legitimate tactic now, because you don't get a 55-point Wraith, wearing them like a hat after 2 turns. And so because people have allocated more points into their big models, army sizes have probably come down a little bit. And obviously that's been mitigated by the fact that you now have Heroes of Legends. But I'd say in general, a very slight downward trend. But that also plays into the meta, which is currently spinning to be quite a lot like the European meta. I think England and Europe are now sort of coming along to the same thing of like Black Numenorian frontline is really good. And so we've gone into a slightly more elite, bubbly, hide behind a Shadow Lord, sort of almost like a murder fortress as opposed to slightly more unique or generalist lists, which feeds into, again, just having a slightly smaller model count because you only really need to fill the area that your auras are in.
No, what's your average model count that you would say just in general at like a 800 point?
800 points, you're probably high 30s, low 40s, I'd have thought.
Wow.
Probably more in the 30s than 40s. My point-o-matic is you take the points value, divide it by 10, half it, and then add 1 per 100 points. That's how I do it. So I tend to be higher model count than the majority of people I play.
So if there's like a high 30s, what would you usually see to make it? Because I don't know about what you guys would do, but like a lot of the American scene is seen like 800 points. Anything below 45 is not.
Yeah,
like,
it's kind of more
adequate,
mid
like,
to high 40s.
Yeah, like in Pennsylvania at least, like all the lists we're coming out with are 50 to 60 and stuff like that. That's
amazing. So I'd come to an event in America thinking I've got this kick-ass list that I've won the league with, and I'd be outnumbered and absolutely crucified. Which
no, but yeah, we were shocked. Like Devin can attest to this. When we all went to Articon, like we were shocked. Like coming up against lists that had 13, 14, 15 models. It was just like, what is this? And then you show up with your like 20 crossbows and you're like, let's go.
Let's go. Thanks for playing. And I suppose that comes into the play style. And one thing that is good is the meta is still pretty shaky. I don't think anywhere in the world the meta has fully settled for the new edition because there's just so much new stuff and the Legendary Legions. But what we have seen is a much broader trend of Green Alliance's Legendary Legions, and they vary so much because the Siege of Helm's Deep, Uruk-hai, and the Riders of Theoden are going to play in completely different ways, which has made list building harder. Having model counts as high as yours is really good for objective games, which is better now because there's a lot more objective scenarios out there. But if you look at it the other way, taking a smaller, more elite army that is going to compound their points efficiency against half or a quarter of your army at a time, it might do the job. If I've got only 10 models that will kill your models no problem and you can't get in with the rest of your army, it's kind of wasted points. But there's always that trade-off. You can take 50 Riders of Rohan, but you're only going to be able to charge with 10 at a time. And maybe that's just like a hangover of days gone by in England where taking the big casters, the big ring race, the big heroes has become more prevalent, and naturally you're not going to have as many points spare for models.
Let me ask another question then. Monsters, do you ever see them, and if so, when?
Definitely less monsters now, 100%. That might be down to the Legendary Legions having less monsters available in the decent ones. The most common monster would still be Ring Wraiths on Fell Beasts in some way, which is relatively common for most evil players. I'm a fan of a Gundabad Troll. Not a Gundabad Troll, they're rubbish.
Ogre.
Gundabad Ogre,
right.
because they're decent for 60 points. They can turn a game on its head. Generally speaking, I would say we see much less monsters, much more named heroes.
Spellcasters, which ones do you see?
Lady of Light is everywhere, and I hate it.
Yeah. Well, you share that with the other side of the Atlantic.
Everybody likes Lady of Light.
Yeah, I just despise her so much. She's definitely fitting into a pretty nasty meta niche of like Guards of the Fountain Court and her in like a horrible bubble. So she's seen a lot. Gandalf is seen a lot, but only really due to the fact that he's in Lake Town. Who else do we see a lot of? We see a fair bit of Kurdan, but less since the FAQ changes. And again, Wraiths are still Wraiths, and I imagine there'll be a very big spike in them with the new Black Riders Legendary Legion.
And the new black dart rules.
Oh God, don't even get me started on that.
Oh, please get started on that.
that is. So, where do you guys sit on this? Because I was very vocal in the fact that the assumption that the entire SBG community has just been playing the game wrong for 10 years is wild, and I think it's craziness.
Well, yes. I mean, there's a reason the
really
entire SBG community has been playing the game wrong for 10 years, and that's because we've been playing it according to the way the rules were written.
You know? I couldn't agree more. The writing team are really good friends of mine, and they've done a lot of things incredibly well. However, this one is odd. And the fact that now you can take any hero you want and you can just kill their horse when there's nothing they can do about it is wild. Absolutely wild.
Well, so let me ask you this question. I mean, is that the way you think it is going to be played going forward in the UK? I mean,
the rules are the rules. The days of the GVHL FAQ are gone. When we thought that we were going to go independent, when the game was sort of ramping down and we thought the Games Workshop was done with it, the GVHL had its own FAQ for things that needed answering. But as soon as GW picked up their support, we're fully on board with whatever their rules are. So if the FAQ says that, we'll have to suck it up and deal with it. But I think that if
but it says it for Gandalf the White.
Oh, the Gandalf the White.
Well, I mean, that's where it came from, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
here we go.
I mean, I actually feel a little horrible on this because I feel somewhat responsible for this because I was the one who insisted on getting an answer to the Gandalf the White question. Fantastic. And this is the classic example of don't ask the question if you don't want the answer. Because I insisted on asking the question and
did you hear about that? Well, did you hear about the Gandalf the White thing?
So just remind me, just in case I'm thinking of the wrong thing.
So this was the generation of the black dart. Yeah, you cannot use your will to a hero cannot use his will to save his horse from a black dart.
Yeah, for sure.
This came out in an explanation of what you can use.
Gandalf's the White.
Shadowfax's
sure.
Right?
Yeah, so we are talking about the same thing. I think it was a fair question to ask him what can Shadowfax actually do with his stats, but the implication is wild. It's like putting out a fire in the diner to see a volcano erupting outside. If the game was if COVID had never happened and we were just running events as normal, and then that FAQ came out, I think the meta would immediately turn on its head, would immediately do a 180. Because suddenly those heroes that a lot of time and effort has been put into making them decent and resistant to magic and, a general balancing of heroes and magic, because we all know that in the last edition, magic was too good and heroes were rubbish. And now just being able to blow up horses with absolutely no comeback just drops it again.
Yeah.
If I was to take an evil army that wasn't Hobbit era, because that's my favorite, I'd never not take a Wraith now. It is 100% made Wraith
at this
auto
point.
include.
Yeah, Wraiths have now become a new thing that's going to be brought back.
Yeah,
and the mega hero that we talked about, like there's use in the mega hero nowadays. Now it's like, not really anymore. Like your Immerheal, boom, there's the horse. Your Boromir, boom, there goes the horse.
I actually found it kind of an interesting ruling because I'm like, why would you ever want to make it where there's no response to this?
Yeah,
it's a very interesting ruling.
You get Galadriel, Lady of Light, who fortifies spirit.
Which is
fortify spirit, the horse.
But then that goes back.
You fortify spirit,
the old meta,
figure, so
and like that
covers the horse.
That's what gets me with the old meta. It was like ring race, Galadriel to counter, ring race, Galadriel to counter, and like when the new meta came out, it was like people brought no magic in one, people brought different things in one here and there, and like I have a fear that it's just gonna trot back to like.
I think that FAQ is going to go away. I think once the meta actually comes back and there's enough complaints about it and you see it get ridiculous, and then God forbid, Jay plays Lake Town and then the horse of Bard dies to a black dart that he can't do anything about, rules going to change.
or Gandalf's non-Shadowfax horse dies.
Yeah.
I have never felt so strongly that a ruling has been incorrect before.
Yeah.
And I hope it changes, because it will literally just turn the meta on its head.
Yeah.
There will be no reason to take a Lord of the Rings era Evil Army and not drop 55 points on a Ring Wraith. Because I would spend 55 points to take
To
your
kill a
heroes
horse.
off their horses.
Oh yeah. I mean, that literally, it's one of the best investments you can make. Like at that point.
And so I hope that it doesn't stay.
Sorry,
but it also puts way
I
more stock
cannot
into
see
my.
that staying.
It puts way more stock into my Azog on White Warg. So whatever.
It really just needs to have enough of a problem created before August, so that way it can get rid of it before Articon. So next FAQ.
But the thing is, the problem also amplifies as well, because if you've just got a load of Chod Wraiths and someone comes with their Witch King on Fellbeast, it's still the same problem.
Yeah.
And if anything, it feels more egregious then, because someone's paid 50 points for their Fellbeast, and you can go, "Hello, Magic Man, the strongest Magic Man there is. Your mount is dead. Thank you for playing." It's just bananas. It's like the old the Channel Sap Will days again.
You'll never see a Fellbeast. You'll never.
Yeah.
Who would pay 50 points for their Fellbeast to go away like that?
Well, at least you got to hit it 3 times.
No, you don't.
Yeah, but
just channel it.
Just
channel
it.
Just channel it, and
then you've got a very mad Witch King with his crown and flail just stood at the back of his door. Like it's honestly just it's interesting.
It's not even that, because sometimes you end up losing a combat with your Witch King on Fellbeast, or any ring on Fellbeast. The Fellbeast might suffer a wound, and it's like, yeah, whatever. Then maybe sometimes you might suffer 2 wounds. Okay, well, I don't care. I still have a Fellbeast, and then the ring rate goes.
Yeah. It's wild. It's wild.
All right. I think we'll move on to the last section for today, which is the duel. So for anybody who hasn't listened to us do the duel before, essentially what it is 2 people on the podcast are going to be going over, their list, and we're going to try to recreate a tournament scene where essentially it's the feeling of you get to a tournament. You took your list. You're now going to find out what scenario you got given. You're going to find out the board you get given, and then you're going to find out your opponent's army. And you're going to try to make a hypothetical battle. And Mick, Rainier, and Devin will determine who would win that. Matt's going to step in for me in that regard with the map and the scenarios, as I will be going up against Will this week. But essentially, what it is, it's a fake game where we determine. We kind of give you how we would go through in a tournament based on the scenarios we were given earlier on in the week. So I'll pass it over to Matt to kind of go over that real quick.
All right. So I think what we're going to do, so I've picked out 3 potential scenarios here, and they are Divide and Conquer, Lords of Battle, and Heirlooms of Ages Past.
Did they know them before now?
Yes.
They knew the potential ones. Yep. But I think before we actually select the scenario, I think I want to have you guys describe your armies. So I think, normally we would have the guest go first, but I think I want to build suspense since Tim's last name isn't Champion.
Got more of a hill to climb up.
It could be you're 1 win away.
That's right.
What's the points? Was it 800 also?
800 points.
It was 800 points. So Tim, why don't you talk about your list first?
Okay. So I had been, I made this list. I've been working on it for a while now because I've always wanted, I've seen real value in Arnor, and their models are just for 8 points. I think they're fantastic at Fight 4 with Defense 6 and having that ability. So I really wanted to make that work, but obviously you can't really take a full Arnor list and kind of make it work relatively well. So I did a Rivendell and Arnor alliance, and my leader is going to be Glorfindel with the Armor of Gondolin on Asphaleth. He has 5 Rivendell warriors with bows and spears, 5 Rivendell warriors with shields and spears. And then I also took Círdan, and he has 5 Rivendell warriors with spears and shields. I also have Arvedui, and Arvedui has 9 warriors of Arnor, 1 warrior of Arnor with banner, 3 rangers of Arnor, and 2 rangers of Arnor with spears. And I also have an Arnor captain, 8 warriors of Arnor, 2 rangers of Arnor, and 2 rangers of Arnor with spears. So I have 46 models. I have 9 might, and I have 14 bows. So basically, the thought process with this list is I have a real beat stick in Glorfindel. He has essentially the automatic Fortify Spirit, which I love. He can't be any brutal power attacked because of his special rule with the armor. Fights 7 with an Elven Blade on a horse that moves 12 inches, and with Lord of the West, he has the ability to reroll in the fight phase and the wound phase. With Círdan was kind of the key to this list. So for anyone who doesn't know, the problem with Arnor is they are Courage 2. So you get that kind of problem where you have Arnor and they have great sailing, but you get into terror or running away and they just go, bye-bye. With Círdan, you get Aura of Command, which gives anybody within 6 inches the ability to pass courage tests. However, he also gives this army everything it needs. You have Blinding Light to prevent from shooting. You also have Aura of Command or Aura of Dismay. So anybody within 6 inches also now causes terror. And he has Enchanted Blades. So I have the ability to give either Glorfindel, if I really want to kill something on horse, they're gone, with 8 dice re-rolling to wound on a horse. But also, more importantly, I have the ability to give it to Arvidui to make Arvidui 3 attacks re-rolling to wound at strength 4 at fight 5. So I kind of get these 2 really big hitters. I also have an Arnor Captain in there, to add more Arnor models, but also it gives me March, and it gives me a kind of third hitting hero because he is fight 5 D7. So you kind of get like 3 okay heroes at fighting, and then Círdan kind of supports the list to bring it all together where, if I get Aura of Command, which I think is on a 2 or 3, which is going to happen, my terror isn't an issue. I then also get Aura of Dismay. So then when anybody within 6 inches of him has to charge, you have to take a terror test to charge him. So it makes it less likely that he's charging me. You also then have Blinding Light to get your guys in fights. But I also have 14 bows, 5 of which are strength 3. All of them hit on a 3+ if I don't move. So I have a decent amount of shooting in this list as well. But what essentially it is, you have a front rank of Warriors of Arnor, back rank of Elves, and then you have a fight 5 front line that has terror, that has Blinding Light, that can auto pass courage, essentially. So that's pretty much my list.
And I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. There's no Malbeth in this list, right?
There's no Malbeth. I don't get
All
the
right.
5+ save.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Will, what you got?
So I have got a fairly standard thing that I'd normally take to tournaments. It's a Hobbit Evil Green Alliance. So from Azog's Hunters, I've got Fimble, Yazneg, and Narzug all on their wargs. I've got 15 Hunter Orcs with bows. I've got 15 normal Hunter Orcs, and then I've also got a Warhorn and a banner. From Azog's Legion, I have a Goblin Mercenary Captain and 2 mercenaries. And I have a Gundabad Captain with shield, with 3 Gundabad Bats and 3 Gundabad Berserkers. And then from Dol Guldur, I just have the Keeper of the Dungeons. So that is 44 models, 18 bows, and 16 might points. The way that I play this list is essentially it is geared to be very, very difficult to lose objective scenarios, because the mercenary captain and the mercenaries can pop up anywhere. There's almost always a terrain piece that 3 bases can fit on, and the Gundabad Bats do fulfill a similar role. 18 bows isn't necessarily anything to write home about because they're only orc bows, but there's enough there to cause a bit of an issue. I can't remember if Glorfindel's got Horse Lord or not.
I believe he does.
He does.
Yeah.
I believe he does, yeah.
So knowing what I'm against now, I probably wouldn't try too hard to win the shooting war. But if there's shots to be taken, they're probably going at Glorfindel's horse just to get rid of that problem. But fundamentally, what it does is it shoots a little bit, or at least forces the issue so we don't have a shoot-off. And it gets in, it swarms, and it just fights with everything. A general strategy of what I'd try and deploy is picking where the fight's going to happen, lining up Fimble, Yazneg, the Keeper of the Dungeons, and getting the banner nearby, and just hitting them straight into a front line, and calling strikes or combats as appropriate. And that is supported by the Gundabad Bats flying over the top, and charging the spear supports. They'll hopefully knock the spear supports over, But in any case, they're making sure that I've got multiple attacks versus one model across the board, and it also traps them. And it's just an attritional list that's there to hit as hard as it gets hit, and hopefully come out on top.
So just so I've got my memory right here and my notes right, we got Fimble, Yazneg, Narzug. We've got a Goblin Mercenary Captain. We have a Gundabad Captain.
Yeah.
And then we have the Keeper of the Dungeons.
Correct.
And did I miss anybody?
No, that's all the heroes.
Okay, got it. All right. All right, so I have to make an embarrassing admission here. I do not have a die anywhere near me. So
I do.
I failed my decred. Good.
Found one.
Roll a die. And
It's a Team England die. So
Okay.
so that's
I'm feeling
so
a little
that-
biased here. I'm not liking this.
All right, so on a 1 or a 2, you guys are playing Divide and Conquer. On a 3 or a 4, you're playing Lords of Battle, and on a 5 or a 6, you're playing Heirlooms of Ages Past. So let's see what we got.
Here it goes. 5.
Ooh, Heirlooms of Ages Past.
That one's so tricky to like do this.
This will
All
be
right.
fun.
So
Just
for
roll a
those out,
d6.
Alright.
One who gets it right is going to win the.
Yeah, right.
for those out there who are playing along at home, we're going to set up the board. This is going to be a Maelstrom of Battle game where folks are going to come on from the various board edges. There are a total of 6 locations that are potential locations for the relic that the players are going to alternate. And they're going to alternate selecting where they go. They cannot be, I believe it's within 12 inches of each other or 6 inches of the edge of the board. And they run around trying to find these things. And when you get in contact with one of the relics, you roll a die. On a 6, you have found the relic unless it is the last search location on the board, in which case it is automatically the relic. And the relic itself is worth 6 points. You can also get, if you are not in possession of the relic, but you have more models within 3 inches of it at the end of the game, you have 3 points. There are leader points, the standard 1 for wounding, 2 for killing. There are break points, 1 for breaking, 2 if you are unbroken. And then there are also banner points. So 1 if you have a banner, and 2 if you're the only one with a banner. And I do recall that Will had a banner. Tim, do you have a banner?
I do have a banner.
You did have a banner. Okay. And wisely so, since you took Kel's. So I think what we are going to do here.
I will chime in here for anyone who's heard this duel. Obviously, this scenario is the most random one of all the scenarios. So it's actually, normally we don't roll for Maelstrom. Like typically we'll just be like, okay, you can theorize it. But because of that, and also whoever finds the prize by accident, that happens in a lot of games where you're actually just trying to clear objectives, but then you roll a 6 and oh, there it is. We're going to assume that won't happen. Okay, so unless anyone has an objection to that,
let's take out the randability and just go for like how y'all are gonna play it.
Yeah,
just give a fair.
Because this scenario is almost one where I'm almost like we probably should never do this one on this format because it's just so many elements of random. So we're gonna assume that you will clear objectives in a way that you want to see fit. You're never gonna accidentally roll a 6. Okay, so the last one revealed will be the objective, let's just say, and you understand that going in. I get it, you probably wouldn't play that way, but and the second thing is for the actual Maelstrom results, I guess we could go about it where we can actually have Mick just kind of roll a die for the first player and then the second player can react. But
I think we should. I think that's what we need to do for a Maelstrom.
We've never done Maelstrom on this format, so let's do that.
No, we have, and I think we did that. We did it that way in the past. So
I think we rolled for each individual war.
Then we're gonna have to do it that way. So that way, because you can't plan around like, oh well,
if this happens, that happens. Yeah. So that's exactly what we should do. So let's
do that then.
Yeah. So Mick, warm up your die here. Yep. Well, you still only need one at a time. All right. Well, I'm going to put the board up on the screen here.
Okay. So this will be our first reaction to the board. And Matt, you're so good at describing. If you can describe it to everyone.
All right. So this is the board. All right. So this is Isengard. And we have the wall of the rock face with the dam that makes up the north edge of the board. There's some scaffolding on that. If you want to climb up on it, you can. The board is dominated by the Tower of Orthanc in the middle of the board, which extends off of the photograph to the top. So it is essentially something you cannot go over or shoot over. Nobody has siege weapons here, so shooting over this thing is not going to be an issue. But that kind of fills up about the 8 inches of the center of the board, and the rest of the board revolves around that. There's 4 kind of built up areas of platforms that raise off the board and have various spinning wheels and hoists and things like that on top of them. So they're platforms that one can climb up on a ladder. They're 3 or 4 inches off the ground. They are scattered about so that there's essentially one of varying size. Some are larger, some are smaller, in each quadrant of the board. And then there are 3 pits with some scaffolding going over that are also scattered about. There are 2 on the eastern side of the board and 1 on the western side of the board. Just so you know, the way we play these, we play these as bottomless pits. I'm not sure you have anything that can really take advantage of that, but we have had interesting situations where somebody has been hurled into those bottomless pits, sorceress blasted into those bottomless pits, or have a Watcher of the Water emerge next to it and then pitch somebody into those bottomless pits. So they're fun to play with as well. So that's the description of the board. And I think we can then proceed directly into who has priority and see how people deploy here.
We need to deploy the objectives first, I think.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Yes, indeed we do. So let's do that.
So there was actually a feature that Tim wanted to use once where you could draw on it. Is that something that we can do here? I understand all our podcast listeners probably won't say, but we'll try our best to mark it out. We could also just simply say they're randomly, evenly distributed amongst the board because it is 6.
You can see my cursor here, right?
Yes. Hopefully it goes into the recorded version of this, but yes.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's the best we're going to do because I don't have this open in Paint or anything like that where I can make marks on this. I've just got
So there's obviously we've taken an element of the randomness out of this for fairness sake, which completely makes sense. Obviously, my army kind of likes the random. So with what we're doing with the objectives, the first thing that I would aim to try and do, whether we put them there or not, is all of my objectives would be going straight on top of any of the scaffoldings that I could, just to sort of start proceedings, I suppose. I'd absolutely be getting my objectives up on stuff because I don't need to climb it, and Tim would.
Yeah. I guess my objectives would kind of just be as close as possible together because my army kind of wants to stay together, and if I could keep two kind of objectives as close as possible together, and you always take this risk when doing this, but I feel fine with, I think it's like an 18% chance every time. I'd let Will try to go and grab the objectives and then just hold on to my 2 and then wait for it to be the prize.
All right. Well, let's do this. Mick, roll a die. Odds Tim's going to do the first one.
We're going to start with the Articon die. It's a 3.
All right, Tim, where's your first objective going?
I would probably put, where would I want? I would probably put it as close to the corner where your mouse, other bottom left, I guess.
Just so I could chime in with 6 objectives, and we know that Tim is kind of almost neglecting the objectives in an attempt to have Will maybe roll for it anyway. Couldn't we just say they're evenly distributed amongst the board? Just maybe
no, because there's a strategy here. There's a strategy here for location denial.
I'm sorry, Matt. Bottom right is what I meant to say. Bottom right.
So down here.
Yeah, I'd put it as close to the board edge as possible.
All right, right about here then.
Yes, I'd probably put it right around there.
Will, where you going?
Super quick question. The big sexy dam you've got across the top of the board?
This one.
I assume that's not in play, but can you still deploy off that board edge?
I think it's off the board.
You can. Well, it's technically resting on the edge of the board, but we usually play that you can come on from that board edge.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because obviously that would make quite a big difference. So we've got one in the bottom corner. So I would put one just to try and make things a bit more difficult in the scaffolding on the left-hand side of the picture, like the little square one.
This one here? Okay.
Yeah,
that's number 2.
Go upstairs in that scaffolding.
Understood. Tim, where's the next one going?
I would probably put it the minimum distance to the right of where I put mine. So yeah, from there
somewhere
to
over here.
Yeah, somewhere over there.
Got it. Will, where's number 4 going?
Pick another scaffolding.
All right. This one.
There you go. Sure.
Yeah, we'll go on the one on the right hand side.
Sounds
right,
good.
Dead center up there.
All right, Tim, your last objective.
I would probably put it towards the tower in the middle on that bottom right.
All right, so over here.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to jump on a limb here and say, Will, that your next one is going to be on top of this scaffolding.
Actually, no.
No, okay.
So the final objective, I would try and find somewhere to put it between, basically on the board edge that Tim's been working up. I would try and place the final objective on there somewhere.
Okay, so he's got one here.
Don't they have to be 12 inches away?
They do. Yeah. You probably end up being like over here.
Yeah, I was gonna say it'd probably end up over there.
Yeah, that is perfect.
All right, so it'd have to be over here, and you could probably squeeze it in the corner.
Yeah, I'm pretty
more
sure.
Than 12 inches from over here.
Yeah.
From the one that you'd already placed. Okay, fair enough. So
so a majority are on the east side of the board. Like
majority are on the east side of the board. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 on the east side of the board. I think 5 on the east side of the board because there's another one.
Yeah, we've got 5 on that half and then 1 on the scaffolding.
One's
on the
sitting out on the.
I'd be very interested if measuring actually allows you to do that, but we'll assume that they'll bump a couple inches here or there if needed.
I think it's possible. So, okay, so Mick, who's got priority?
So, Will rolls a 5.
Boo.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
All right, Will.
Mick, I'll PayPal you later.
Outrageous.
So you actually will have to roll, Mick, for all of Will's warbands.
I will, yes.
So, Will, what's the first one?
Okay, so the mercenary goblins are going to go into ambush, obviously.
Yep.
So let's go for the most expendable, which is the keeper of the dungeons.
It's a 6.
Anywhere you want, Will.
He will. I assume that all of the objectives that you've put on Tim are 6.1 inches away from the board edge, so I can't try and dig them up. Yeah, cool. He will. Where are we? So we've got 3 on this side. So the scaffolding on the left-hand side, he's going to come up just on the inside. On the left-hand side, the right-hand side. Yeah. So in this back corner where there's about 3 objectives, he's going to come on just towards. Yeah, exactly where your mouse is. All right. Just sort of meeting up in the corner, and he'll stand there looking lonely.
All right. Got it.
Let's go for Narzug, because he's my general. I should probably let people know that.
It's a 2.
It's a 2. Okay. Will you be spending any might, sir?
That is a good question. So north and south is the dam and the not dam, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That is very interesting. Narzug will probably spend 2 points of might, and he will come on the bottom board edge with the keeper, where the keeper of the dungeon is. He'll come into
this direction right here.
Absolutely.
All right. So the keeper of the dungeon and Narzug are coming in the lower right-hand corner. The southeastern corner of the board, and they're one from the south, one from the east. They're converging on each other.
Yeah. So regarding the objectives, what have we said's happening to them? The final one is the one.
The final one is the one. Of course, you probably wouldn't actually know that, but most of the time people clear out objectives to stop them from, for the opponent from doing it.
So Narzug, because he's mounted, will move up and dismount to see if his warg stays. If he's basically on the 5-inch mark.
So he's gonna run up and grab an objective. Is that what he's doing?
Basically, yeah. He's gonna run up.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't he need if he dismounts? Doesn't he need a 6 to see if If he can do anything that turn?
Yeah, well, no, not
No,
to see if he
not
can
the
do anything.
warg. The warg can go.
Oh, the
wargs
warg can. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
The warg's a free agent,
Gotcha.
so the warg
Makes sense.
basically I'll dismount. If the warg stays, the warg will go for the prize.
Gotcha.
And all of the archers in that warband, so there's 5 bows in each warband, will move on half to give me shots.
Fair enough. Next.
So that's those 2. Let's go for Yaznag.
It's a 2.
Oh, will he be spending might, sir?
Yeah, he'll spend 2 as well.
All right.
Well, when you have 16 might points, you can afford that.
True. Well, now he's got 12.
So Yaznag will actually, I think I just want to fight you. So he's basically going to come on in a similar area in a way that makes sense. So
right.
The hunters.
Yeah. So somewhere in the lower, the southeastern quadrant to kind of match up with everybody else.
Yeah, he'll go sort of full beans up. Depending on what happened with the last warg, he might try and do similar, but probably not. And the bowman will move half. So basically same again. The bows will be ready to shoot. The hunters will run up, being huntery. And then we'll go for Thimble.
All right.
It's a 2.
A 2. Mick,
Will
again,
he
I'll
be
send you
spending might,
PayPal.
sir?
I'll send you PayPal.
That is amazing. I will actually let Tim place Thimble.
All right, Tim. Where's Fimble coming on?
I will place Fimble in the same spot that he's been coming in from.
Okay. All right. So Fimble is now consolidated with everybody else, I guess.
So
Or
is
more or
his
less.
army largely on the southeast,
Yes.
except that does he have anything on the northeast?
No.
Okay.
And again, he'll come on in a way that just makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Probably everyone's going to be trying to stay on the right-hand side of that crater, so I don't lose half my army trying to go around it.
Yep.
No, you just give it a jump. See if it works. Try.
Probably not. They're not gymnasts; they're hunters. So finally, it'll be the Gundabad captain, and if you roll a 2, Mick, I'm going to report you for harassment.
Mick.
It's a 6.
Oh,
right.
Outstanding! It was conveniently off screen, but I'll take it. So the Gundabad captain is essentially going to fill the gap between the scaffolding and the crater to the right-hand side.
I'm guessing over here.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. Again, slightly more defensively, not just sort of letting you come on wherever. And the Gundabats are immediately just going to fly off hunting for objectives in the way that makes the most sense.
Yep.
Got it. All right. So that's Will's deployment there. We've got.
I like that
pretty
term,
much
Gundabats.
The army.
That's like the new official term.
I love that.
Yeah, I
It's
like
great.
that too.
It just makes sense.
All right. So
I call them Gundabats too now.
Tim, you're up. Which warband is first?
I'm gonna go with Kierden.
All right. Let's see where Kierden shows up.
It's a 1.
He does not.
Kierden will keep his own counsel on this stuff.
All right,
Who's
Nick.
next?
I need.
Hey, it's better than a 2.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yep.
Okay. I will do then. Do Glorfindel.
Go Glorfindel.
It's a 2.
There's
Oh,
a 2.
lovely, Nick. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Never roll mixed dice at a tournament.
Oh man.
Nick, we're gonna have to have a talk about these dice. They seem to be very consistent at 2.
It only works if the number is 2.
I don't like this, but I would spend 2 might to go to choose my north or south. I'm gonna put Glorfindel in the top left corner.
So over here.
Yes.
Yeah. So all the
Okay.
way away from Will's armies.
Yes.
All right.
We'll do Arvadoing next.
It's a 2.
Mick, what's going on here, bud? Mick, what's going on here? I don't like this. You do it
This
to
is
Will,
the
not me.
best.
This
This
is
is
exactly
the
why I
best.
haven't won many tournaments.
Mick, when you load dice, you want them to roll 6s, not 2s.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know why you put the lead on the 4 side of the die.
Mick's used to playing evil armies, and he wants to win those roll-offs.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to do the same. I'm going to go with 2 might to go in the top left corner.
Okay.
Isn't it more fun when people spend all of their might on deployment?
Yeah.
No, it's not. I'm not enjoying this.
It is when I had 16 to start with.
All right. So who do we have left here? The
We have the
Arnor
Arnor captain.
The 5.
East or west? I'll come in left of the board edge towards where I've been going.
Toward the middle or toward the top?
Towards the top.
Toward the top. Okay, so your army's pretty consolidated toward the top left. Will is consolidated towards the bottom right, except toward the side right where he's got Gundabats flying around.
Yes.
All right. So
we're generally opposite edges of the board, though.
Yeah.
About as far away as we could be from each other.
Yeah.
Yes. So Will,
and about the opposite edges from where you want, where you both want it to be.
Yeah.
Will, why don't you talk through what your plan is, and then we'll have Tim talk through what his plan is, and then we can adjudicate here.
Well, should we roll to see where Kieran comes in? Now that
yeah. Well, no. Here, talk through your strategy. Talk through your strategies, and then just for yucks, after you've talked through your strategies, we'll see where Kieran shows up, and we can factor that into our adjudication.
Cool. So essentially, with the way that I like to play deployment is obviously you always try and put objectives in a way that's the most inconvenient for your opponent, not necessarily the most convenient for yourself. So for me, putting stuff up high, it's a climb test for Tim. It's a fly for me. At a point where almost all of the objectives are on one half of the board, knowing that Tim is a slightly better shooter than I am, and I say slightly very tentatively, he almost definitely outshoots me. I then want to flood that board with that side of the board with all of my models to mean that if we're going to fight, the shooting is going to be as little an element as possible. That being said, if I'd have had my luck of the dice, I'd have probably spread my warbands a little bit to take that whole table edge, but you've got to play with what you've got. From this point on, the Goblin mercenaries are going to come on probably the scaffold on the left and burn that. And then I can't conceivably see a situation where I don't end up with the objective somewhere. And the rest of the army is probably going to use the Gundabad captain's might points to march over to make sure I get my army in front of the objective.
So I chose the back left corner because there's not a ton of movement space in between. You kind of have to go into different paths. Obviously, Will took my 3 objectives thing, so I had to kind of maneuver from there. I chose the back left corner, like I said, because there's only certain ways you can move through it. But also, with the first turn, I would call a march with my captain, and I would get up to the top. And then the next turn, I would claim, or I would move over the objective, I should say. And I would position it in a way where Will can't land with his bats, and just try to protect it from there. And if his bats, come in.
Wait a second. I want to make sure. Is there an objective in the top left?
Yeah, there's one, I think, right? Like on that scaffolding. Was it?
No. As far as I'm aware, looking at the picture, you've got scaffolding bottom left, scaffolding top right, and then assorted objectives between the two.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't there 3 in the bottom left and then 1 on each on the top?
No, there's 3. There's 3 in the bottom right.
Yeah.
Where Will deployed his army.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. And then there was 1
back corner.
Yeah. One in the top right corner.
Yeah. So there's 5 on that.
1 in the
side.
scaffolding in the top right, and 1 in the scaffolding.
Oh well, then I just misheard. That's my fault. And then I guess I would just rush to the one.
Okay. I mean, would you have?
Where would you have deployed?
I'll give you a slight credit here. Because if you didn't, I can understand how it's easy to get this confused. Would you have deployed? Who was the only option you had? It was only one of your guys rolled a 5.
So at that point, I would have put the Arnor captain towards the middle left or bottom left.
Bottom left. Okay, so you would have separated him from the rest of your army. Okay.
Yes.
We're going to go ahead and give you that only because I understand how you could have gotten confused on this. So.
Yep.
That's what the Nova TO says. So that's
well. I mean, he spent might with Glorfindel to come on at a particular point, so he could put. In fact, I think he spent might with both Glorfindel and Arvedui.
So let's see. A two was north or. Well,
yeah. So
would you have put your whole army there?
You have to spend all 3 to go top, to go left or right.
Yeah. I think what I would have done. Okay, so I would have had to have deployed north or south. God, that's not good rules. I probably would have just left it as is because no, you know what? I would have let Will. No, because Will would put me in his corner. I'd be killed. No, I would have kept it the way it is. I would have kept it the way it is because
So you have nothing on the bottom left.
I would have had the Arnor warriors coming in from the bottom middle left.
So the captain is going to deploy further down. That's the only change.
Yes.
He's
Yeah,
the
and then
only
the
one
two
who's
will
separate.
start from the north
Makes
and then
complete
come.
sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes complete sense. So it's going to be priority for turn 2 then, because that's going to be pretty important.
Yes.
All right, so that is probably the most important thing for my decision on certain things. So, but what is the role for priority turn 2? Go ahead, Mick.
Well, actually, roll and then roll Kierden
And then roll.
we need
Well,
Kierden
after the
Kierden.
priority roll, yeah.
Yeah, after priority.
So we'll have priority in the first one. So if he ties, then obviously Tim is going to get it. So Will's roll is a 2. Tim's roll is a 2. So Tim gets priority.
What is going on with these dice?
Mick, that's like 18 twos.
Yeah.
All right, so the only thing I'm particularly caring about right now is what Tim is going to do, because I already know exactly what Will has in mind. So, or I think I do.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, what are you doing?
So I would be calling a march with my captain to get to the objective. And in terms of, I don't know that anybody else in my list has march. Let me check on that real quick.
No, nobody else in your list has march.
Yeah, I don't think they do. So, I just move as close as possible to that objective, I guess is the best way to put it. And then try to build up the line.
So you said so how are you moving this group here? You're calling a hard march.
I have one in the bottom left, and I would move it to get to the objective as quickly as possible.
So he's trying to run onto that scaffolding, climb the ladder,
and not let his if there's nowhere to land, he can't get to it. So then he has to do climb tests to get up there. At which point he has fighting up at the.
So you're bringing your whole army from the north down to south to kind of relieve that captain and his warband.
Yes, because
are you leaving any archers back there, or are you bringing the whole thing in?
Well, there's no. At this point, my objective is just hold on to that one objective, because I don't see a point in going right for that one, simply because Will's army is going to go, probably. Maybe try to take the left one, but a majority is going to claim the bottom right and then maybe go for the top right kind of thing. So he's going to be going for those. And then if I can just hold down one objective, then just do my best from there, I suppose.
And I think the only last thing, and maybe they'll ask other questions, but is Will, how are you responding to that?
I'm not overly concerned. It's hard to get a gauge for it, obviously looking at this picture. But the first thing I'd do is roll to see if my Goblin mercenaries come on, and I would spend all of the resources I needed to make sure they do.
Do they come in before priority, before he moves?
No, it's at the start of my move phase, I believe.
Got it.
Yeah. So Mick, roll those dice, Mick. Let's see if they show up.
The 1 and a 5.
Yeah. So I've got a war horn, so they're coming on.
Yeah.
So I have a march. So if I position my models well enough, he can't land on that terrain piece.
I think he can, because he's gonna drop them all on the top of that scaffolding.
Well, no, but if they all have, every single model has to fit within it.
So Tim had mentioned that he was, and this is what I was kind of asking him that question that specific way. He's using the march to completely occupy that top scaffolding.
Yes.
Well, I don't think he can. I don't think, and I think this is Will's point. I don't think he can get there on turn 2. Because he's going to come on, his first turn he's going to end up here.
I move 6 inches, and then and
then he moves 9 inches.
And I position my models in a way that you can't fit an entire 13 model. So he's
probably going to do this.
And he's got at least 3 inches going up.
Yeah, I don't think he's actually.
Well, how many models in the warband?
Only 3.
Oh, then never mind. 5. Oh, shoot. Yeah. All right, I thought you had a full warband.
He very cunningly had these small goblin mercenary.
I would have to really space them out to not be able to fit.
It'd be pretty tricky.
Yeah.
It is hard from pictures, and I know this is all theory hammer. I would be very confident that I would be able to get some goblins up there and burn that objective.
I guess I could just do my best to try and occupy the space.
For sure. It's the vertical. It's the vertical of the ladder that becomes the
out of curiosity, because there is one way. Because I know we were saying like the last one would do it, but Nick, roll a die, see if you roll a 6. Because that's the problem, right? Is if he finds the objective up there.
Yeah.
Would you like one of the Archon dice that sort of roll the 2 every time?
No. Pick one that rolls 6s.
We'll
Okay,
go Team England. That'd be fitting.
Is a team?
Yeah, I want that one. I want that number.
It's a 6.
Yes!
Oh my! So we have all right. So I mean, I know we set out the way.
Yeah, no, we'll go with it. We'll go with it.
But we would have a game at that point.
Yeah, at that point it would be a game because it was pretty obvious that
That'd be
Will
a
was
crazy
in
game
charge
too.
here.
I went from like a 10% to
All right,
like.
so we'll stop here and we'll say, what are the thoughts? And if you need to ask specific questions, we can go at it.
This is what we'd call inconvenient. So essentially, what happens here for me is, assuming that no warriors actually made it all the way up, I defend the ladder and wait for my army to arrive and hope for the best. If there are models up there, I try and do the same and have to fight a little bit harder. It's 2 goblins, two goblins, a captain, and 2 might. They will do their best to survive as long as they can. However, from where my army is, and I also have March and the Bats.
Well, wait. But that's a key thing. Your March, you have a Gundabad captain up northeast, and you have a mercenary captain. Where's your other March? Because actually, I needed to ask.
No, that's it. I've got those 2 marches.
So your 2 marches are away from the core of your army.
Yeah, but one of those marches is irrelevant because he's hiding in a scaffolding.
No, I'm saying the other one you have though is not around your army.
Devin said
he's not. No, but within a turn he would be within range, or failing that, him and the Gundabad Berserkers can make some reasonable headway.
Yeah, because he's not that far out of place, Devin. He was kind of in this area right here.
Yeah,
Okay.
He's not within range of the whole army, absolutely not. But he could be soon, and it just becomes a race of who gets there first.
And the other interesting thing is that most of Tim's army is also out of place.
Yeah, way out of
it's
place.
up here at the northeastern corner of the board. So this is actually, I think, going to turn out to be a really fun meeting.
That would be
this would be a great game. This would be phenomenal.
Yeah, so it's going to be a race of who gets there first. I think one of the crucial differences will be I've still got more might to burn, and I'm happy to do so.
Yes.
And my army doesn't really need to be ready to fight when it gets there because it's 35 odds to attack dudes, whereas ideally Tim's going to want to have his Arnor on the front, elves behind, sort of ready to have that efficient fighting line.
I'm just shield.
Yeah. I think that the main thing, depending on how dire the circumstances down at the scaffolding, I would likely throw some models under the bus and try and block you off between Orthanc and the chasm, just to the left-hand side, and basically just try and keep you off the objective while I clear it and make some headway. And I'd also pay particular attention to make sure my banner stays alive at all times.
So, Tim, I have a question for you that is going to be key to my resolution here, and that's your warband with the captain. So I think probably it is not going to be able to get. I think you're going to have a fight over that ladder, but I'm going to assume that eventually you will prevail there. Once you get up on top of the scaffolding, what's your plan? And presumably kill the goblins and get the objective. What's your plan then?
Okay, so for me to answer that, I need to know where Kieran is.
Yes.
That's an interesting point.
Oh, yes,
Fair point.
Oh, yes, we haven't rolled for that yet.
Very, very good point.
You don't get the England die. You get the Archon die.
He's already got as much
Mick.
as he can
Come on,
conceivably
Mick.
hope for out of
Here we
the
go,
England
Mick. Another 6.
It's a 4.
Okay, 4, which is north or south.
Top and bottom.
Yeah. So I'd come in from the bottom left, and put him there. Get a little bit more elves into the fight. To help support. At that point,
which one would you cast?
At this point, I don't really need blinding light. So I'd probably cause Aura of Dismay to try to make him. He's got regular, I believe, Hunter Orcs, correct?
Yeah.
So he has to charge me,
Nick,
which gives me
we
more
don't really
time.
need to roll it because I imagine he's going to.
So,
he's gonna keep casting. He's gonna cast it.
So I
just wants
Aura
to continue to be the chaos agent in this.
I try to cast Aura of Dismay to make him so that even though he's trying to get in front of me, well, if you can't charge me, you can't get to me. So I just wait, let my armies come through. And then the interesting thing is yes, I try to get up the ladder by fighting, of course. However, I would also position bows so I can just shoot you off, and then if the objective eventually clears off, then I can just walk up there and get it, and then position myself where your bats can't get to me. So then you have to shoot at me, at which point I cast Blinding Light, and then you're just having to shoot through nonstop to try to get the objective, which is up on an elevated plane.
Yeah, sounds fair enough.
So I guess unless any judges have more questions, I was going to go first because of unfortunately I have to leave in about 15 minutes. But so in this, my thought process here is I think Will is going to get to the captain before the army of the North arrives to reinforce. I don't think Glorfindel and them are going to make it in time, mostly because he's got a giant awkward scaffolding and then another pit like in his way, whereas Will's path is actually quite open, like from the grand scheme of where things are placed. The heroic march I could factor in. The fact that it's just simply an option Will has if it happens to connect is good. Tim doesn't have that option. There is no march up near the north, and I don't think he's going to race Glorfindel out by himself. As far as I'm aware, the banner is with RV, so that's safely put. So reasonably, I'm going to factor in that both banners survive this game. I don't think Will is going to let his horde of models leave it unprotected. I don't think Tim has a way to get rid of it in a very easy, obvious manner.
If I can get some archers up on the top of that thing, I can shoot them down.
I'm going to assume Will's not going to make.
No, I know. I'm just simply saying that I'd probably try to do that.
And I through the course of a game, lucky shots. You shoot 3 shots, and then all 3 hit kill, and it's like, oh my god, the banner died. Like you could throw that out there, but like in this game, I'm going to assume both banners are going to survive this. Mostly positioning and all that. I think Kieran 5 warriors plus this captain. I think they're ultimately screwed against the army.
I'm throwing 3 dice at Aura of Dismay.
I am assuming you have gotten that spell to go off. Yes. Even without 3 dice, I think you're going to have it happen. I think you'll roll 2 even, and maybe might have 4 up to a 5. I think it's going to happen.
Hooray for Warhorns!
Yeah, and the thing is that I'm not super convinced it will matter a lot. I think through the slow. With the amount of models he's throwing in there, and you're not shooting him at all because you're moving your whole army to reinforce. So 44 courage tests, I get it. The whole army's not exactly there, but let 30 courage tests. He's going to land in there. And every time he does, he's got 2 attack strength 4 will actually beat through the defense 6 models. And I get it that you have the higher fight, but you're not putting numbers to bear because you don't have enough models here in this fight. So especially if Rangers are kind of in the back trying to shoot, then now you have realistically 8 warriors, because I'm assuming you're sending the captain up there to go kill his captain as fast as possible. So you have 8 warriors, maybe 7 if you send another warrior up to help, defending against the entirety of Will's army.
Well, I also have the elves. I have the elves as well.
You do have 5 elves that have just shown up. And
how big was the captain's warband?
It was 12.
It's 12, but it's 8 warriors, 4 rangers. He's going to throw the captain up at the top is my assumption, which if he calls a heroic march for the captain is arguable if he can even do it if the mercenaries are in the way to charge up there.
I think the captain on top is actually a smart thing, because if
it's smart.
If the captain kills him, the captain takes the thing, then you have a fight 5 shielding guy right up there just
the captain is a smart move. I'm not saying it's not smart. I'm now taking the realism of the situation at hand. I think Tim did the best he could do with that situation. I think he's sending the captain up, and it's defense 7, fight 5 guy with 2 attacks, and I believe the captain still has might on him.
Yes,
should have at least 1, assuming he cuts through the goblin captain without having to spend any.
Yeah, which I imagine he's barring a really tempting roll, I imagine he's going to go ahead and just try to do it without spending the might, knowing what's coming, which is the army of Gundabad. A couple factors here. I do think the plethora of heroes will be able to torch through what Tim has here. I do think the Gundabad bats will arrive quickly, and I think if they get their hands on the captain, then they'll eat through his armor pretty quickly. It's just a thought. I mean, 40 mil bases on that scaffolding with all that's going on, probably not. There is a scenario where I will admit that if Tim holds out, shields, 4 dice, all that, long enough for the other army to arrive, he might still be alive with the heirloom. But at that point, I think Will will repivot, engage the army. But I think most of Tim's forces down south will be destroyed at that point anyway. And then realistically, Will just needs a couple things to harass this captain and kill him eventually. So it's just my guess, and I think just based on the situation that's going on at hand, I think Will end up getting it and blockading Tim from a disadvantaged position of having no march and lots of massive obstacles in his way. I think Will probably take this game.
Okay. I guess Rainier, if you want to go next.
Yeah, I'm coming to similar conclusions actually. I think you isolating your force up north with no march was a bit of a mistake. That said, I don't think it's game ending in a way, because let's say you're 3 turns behind. I do honestly think with how many elves were in Kurdan's warband?
5.
So it's 6 plus, what is that? I do think 19 models, many with shields, you outfight Will's force. If done well, I think you could last around 3 turns of combat in that. And the Arnor captains with shield is really good. Defense 7. If you keep him up there, he has the relic, assuming that he grabs it from the guy, you're defending a barrier for someone coming up the ladders with defense 7. Any wounds is going to wound him on 6s and stuff. And I think you would arrive in time for that. I think Will played it perfectly, and it was kind of funny because Will lost 4 might, and then you rolled 2s also, you lost 4 might. So Will, of course, could afford it. It was a pinch. For you, it was a punch across the face.
Yeah.
But I think initially seeing the scenario was Maelstrom, I thought, okay, Kurdan's you're not gonna get his value. But as soon as you rolled putting him where he is, I think you're gonna get the most out of him in this game, just because you can.
I would also
cause blinding light. You can cause terrifying aura and large terrifying aura, and the terrifying aura with the
He
shielding.
didn't channel it.
Oh no, but possibly, but the terrifying aura, because you do have that 1 might left that you can decide whatever you want to do. And I looked in Kurdan's profile, the reoccurring will each turn.
Yeah.
Is huge.
Yes.
That's the okay, I'm gonna 1 dice it, blinding light. You're not gonna shoot me this turn.
And
okay.
You know what? Maybe that was my fault for not considering channeling it, which would probably have been the better.
No, but you could decide.
I think
to
it was
channel
actually
it.
Okay not to channel it, only in the sense that
I agree.
I think not channeling it was actually the better move.
Because you save it, because then you can decide what do I need to channel.
And it gives me a heroic move.
I don't think you channel anything. Maybe Enchanted Blade, but nothing. The might is there to maybe call a heroic move if needed. But...
The reason I had left it originally was in case I got my person on top and I was struggling to get him down. It became one of those scenarios where I wanted to be able to, in case I needed to, cast Channeled Blinding Light, so I don't have to worry about wasting Kieran's will every turn.
If you channeled Blinding Light, I would say that's a mistake.
No, I'm
against you.
I'm saying if it came to that scenario, I have it there. But then I also have it for all the, if I wanted to. And the other thing is I can cast Enchanted Blade on the captain to try to wound easier as well. So he has, his strength 4 re-rolling to try to get him.
Admittedly, in a straight fight, the Arnold captain is going to wrench the mercenary captain. The only thing I'd be riding on is defending the raised position.
Yes.
And hoping that just mitigates. Well, it should mitigate at least half of what you try and put through.
Plus, you actually have goblins in the fight at the same time as your captain versus just his captain. So you end up actually probably rolling 4 dice to win combat.
I was going to say, he should have a
he because of the way this works out, he's going to be rolling 3 dice because he's going to have the captain that's going to be standing at the top of the ladder, and he's going to have a chittering horde guy behind it. Yeah. And it's going to be a 1-on-1 fight against the Arnor captain to get up. That's how it's going to work.
And I think just a sort of counter to the way that the plans are unfolding, what I'd most likely be doing, assuming that it's my mercenary captain at the top of the thing with the prize stopping you from coming up, and it's a case of me trying to survive, not you trying to survive, I'd probably send the majority of my army to its doom to just be completely road blocking that main gap of where you're going to come, and I'd just send essentially all of my heroes and then a couple of guys and they will just spend all of their resources to kill everything down in that bottom corner. And then if need be, I would just let the game run its course and let all my models die.
Yeah, because the game doesn't end till 25%.
All right, so
Rainier,
Rainier,
Yes,
what's your vote
Oh,
here?
that's interesting.
No, like it's very difficult, to be honest. Like, and I say this because I think both of you guys are playing it interesting. How it unfolded, it's interesting. But I still think like Tim can even have the opportunity of shooting hunter orcs in the back and getting free kills that way. Not that it would make much difference because you're still going to send the horde upon him, but I don't know. I just, having played relics and how hard if you have someone in a position where he's like in the corner or up elevated and stuff, I think Tim's eventually going to kill the hunter orcs and he's going to take it. And that D7 with the like 17 guys in that corner with the terrifying aura and
The
enough people to
D7, are you
shield.
referring to the captain?
Yeah, the
Right,
captain.
right.
And
Okay.
fight 5 as well too. That fight 5 is going to play pretty big. And then all the heroes, even the strength 4 heroes, require 6 to win them. So I'm just slightly, and maybe this is more so Will to like make Mick just like the final. But I'm gonna slightly, by maybe like 52%, maybe even 51%, go towards Tim, just because the relic game. I don't know, like I think whoever gets it the first usually wins. But in this case, it's kind of as if Tim gets it first.
All right, Nick,
And he's
what's
gonna
your
be
thought?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go towards
I think
Tim. Just
that Will has the relic now, but then I was constantly thinking, yeah, he's probably just gonna hold on to it, and then he's gonna destroy Tim's army, and it shouldn't be too hard to keep hold of it on the top of the scaffold. But then when Will just now said that he's just gonna like throw away his army, just sort of blocking the elves approaching from the northwest, I started thinking that if, let's say, Will breaks first, the Goblin mercenary captain might just randomly happen to fail a courage test, at which point that objective on the top may just become free for all, and it could give it to Will.
Wouldn't the captain be dead by then?
I would expect the captain.
The captain, that Arnor captain is going to kick that captain's butt.
Yeah, so
it depends on how long it takes.
The point of what I was saying, Mick, was a good portion of my army will make sure that his army doesn't get to me until whatever outcome happens is resolved at the scaffolding. And if need be, I could just end up with only my heroes left over there, having wiped out everything that's over there, and they could all just climb up to the top and wait for the game to end. Like if me needing to win this game,
I think it's smart. I think it's smart of Will to throw his army away towards, because it's also Glorfindel's on
too.
Horse with 1 might. There's that 1 might. He can only do one heroic combat. So it's like if he had three might to kind of heroic combat through stuff, but that 1 might totally changes the game.
Well, how many models did you have?
44.
44. Okay, so I have more models than him.
But before we do this,
I don't want to go too much debate. Yeah,
because I still have my verdict to give. So
okay,
I don't
think
Mick's actually given his verdict.
Yeah, he hasn't. My verdict. So basically, it will really depend on how well the reinforcements can come from the top from the top left for the elves. So considering that Will does have like three pretty big heroes, in fact 4 pretty big heroes going straight into the bottom left, I would feel like they would probably easily overcome everything that's there. But it will just depend on if, let's say, he breaks first, things might start running away. So I would say it's slightly in Will's favor because of how heavy concentration of heroes can be put in there, and because of where Glorfindel is pretty far away at the moment. Okay. So I would probably give it to Will.
All right. So we have 2 for Will, 1 for Tim. So this is, I guess, how I would see it unfold. And Will, by the way, you completely had this until we changed the rules on you. Rolled for that 6, it got a 6. And like we said, that made a game. So I think this is all going to turn on 3 things. 1, how quickly Tim can storm the top of the scaffolding. And I think he's got a little more time than folks have been saying to do that, because remember, Will doesn't realize that that objective is there until somewhere near the end of turn 2. So some of his stuff will have been dispersing and going other places to get other objectives, including his bats. So his bats are going to be several turns away at this point before they get up there. Whereas Tim is going to be kind of storming that barricade starting at the beginning of turn 3. And it really depends how easy it is for him to get up there, because I mean, he could just through bad die rolling just not take that scaffolding for 3 or 4 turns, and that I think would doom the game for Tim. I'm going to assume he's going to get up there. And I'm also going to assume, although Tim didn't say this, that the next guy who's running up the ladder kind of behind the initial storming party is going to be Círdan. So it's going to end up probably by like turn 4, turn 5, that there's this little party of Círdan, the captain, and then probably a couple other guys, as many as Tim could have run up there on top of the scaffolding. And that's going to be a really tough nut to crack. So the second thing is Círdan getting up there. The third thing is Glorfindel and how quickly he can get down to that lower left corner of the board. So remember, he's moving 12 inches. And part of this depends on whether, well, actually, no, we know Tim got priority. So on turn 2, Glorfindel knows that that the objective is up there. So he's going to start heading like a bullet, I'm assuming, toward the left-hand side of the board. And I don't think that there's a way that Will can stop him in time, especially if he runs all the way down the left-hand side of the board around that trench, and he's going to be reinforcing it. And I think if Glorfindel can get over there and be on the ground, and the captain of Arnor and Círdan can get on top of that scaffolding, I think at that point the game is Tim's. Now, a bunch of things have to align in order to have that happen. Say again?
Isn't Glorfindel only 1 might, though?
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. He still fights 7. And I mean, and at that
he's got
point,
Horse Lord too, doesn't he
yeah.
have Horse Lord too? So he's not going to be like shot out of his horse or anything.
Yeah, and he can die, right? I mean, all he has to do is kind of hang out around the bottom of the scaffolding and basically kind of interfere with Will's heroes attempting to storm it. And eventually he may get swamped and go down. That's true, but it's just buying time. So anyway, there's a bunch of things that could go wrong with this, and there's a bunch of things where Will could still take it. But just because of that fluke 6, I think I have to lean slightly toward Tim, and so we get we
got ourselves a tie, boys.
We got a split.
Super interesting.
So,
couple points I do want to make, and I know we're running out of time. One is, Tim, remember you can use your objective markers to block out spaces for Will to put his objective markers. So one of the things you can do if you know he's going to be putting objective markers on top of scaffoldings is you can start putting your objective markers at the bottom of scaffoldings.
Yes.
And he can't place it within 12 inches, so that walls him out.
It still kind of works for me. The scaffolding is like a convenience in that it puts another height onto it. But just having the Goblin mercenaries meant that I'm essentially just looking to put my objectives on terrain pieces.
Yeah, at least it's something that Tim doesn't have to climb up to get to.
Yeah,
well,
sure.
So I think the answer really is, I do this a lot in Domination, is you put the objectives where that 12-inch line is overlapping terrain. So if you don't want it in, sort of like if I'm fighting a Wood Elf opponent, and I don't want the objective in woods. You put it next to the woods and deny that whole area. That's usually how it'll go.
Yeah. And Tim, and this was probably the result of just the limitation of the mechanism we have there, where you couldn't actually see where the objectives were. The places where you were spending 2 might to get your guys on the board north-south, there was an objective on the northern side of the board, and this was Will's last objective on the northern side of the board. On the right-hand side, that's where you wanted to center your army.
I didn't think about it. Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah. so that then he has a bunch of objectives, but you have your one objective that you can gather around.
I know we talked about it, but it is hard to like imagine when you don't get to see them, like
Right,
where everything is.
That's where you become a true champion. It's when you can play a whole game in your head.
Well, this is why I'm not Tim Champion.
That's when you become Will
I'm not
Champion.
Tim Champion.
I'm
not Tim
You
Champion.
can visualize all of this.
I'd be lying if I didn't say that I can see it all happening, and I think that's pretty embarrassing.
I can see it all happening. I think a lot of the players who've been playing for a while, you can actually play the game out in your head how it'll work out.
It's like you're chess players now, where you can play chess without an actual board.
There you go.
But yeah, well, so my vote is going slightly for Tim, and like I said, if that 6 had not popped up there, then I think you.
Oh, it was Will's game as soon as all the objectives were placed.
I'd agree. It was like totally like. But yeah, that's.
I really wish that we could play this game now.
Yes, I would love it. This would be a game where even if I lose 12-0, I would have so much fun that I wouldn't care.
Yeah. And the thing about this, it's all hypothetical, but like you have 2 hours of waiting for your opponent to make a mistake in the actual game, and that's where the real strategy comes into play. Where it's like someone's going to make a mistake, someone's not going to do what they're supposed to do. So all this hypothetical is very interesting, though.
Okay. Let us know in the comment section below who you believe would win this based on what we've said and the voting. Let us know as well any lists you'd like for us to go over for future episodes, any ideas you may have for future episodes. And we hope you all have a good week.
Yeah.
Bye.